Get ready to meet a man who died in a grotesque way in the apocalypse and has just been given a second chance. He went back in time exactly 1 month before the sun set the earth ablaze, but this time he will not be the victim. Armed with an absurd spatial ability and a new system that feeds on the despair of others, he decides to deliver the final blow to everyone who betrayed him. While the Jodas think they deceived him and his ex-girlfriend plans to steal his inheritance, Shan is building an impenetrable fortress and stockpiling supplies that will be worth more than gold. The world will burn, celebrities will beg for a sip of water, and Shan will be watching it all from the best seat, savoring his cold revenge. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. No stalling, let's get straight into the story. Tomorrow, March 2nd, 2030, dawned clear and sunny. But inside a stuffy office on a busy street in Lu City, the air was heavy. The distant sound of honking horns and hurried footsteps could not penetrate that room filled with cigarette smoke and tension. "You have any idea what it means to borrow an amount like that?" a calm, almost lazy voice asked. A man lit his cigarette with practiced ease, took a drag, and slowly exhaled, as if savoring the other man's fear. His name was Zan Yanggong, the leader of the Ocean Gang and one of the biggest bankers of the underworld. He looked at the young man in front of him and gave a faint smile. "My interest rates are extremely high." The young man huddled in a blue hoodie stammered. His voice trembled as he said he would accept any interest, that he desperately needed that money. Zan Yanggong leaned forward, his gaze sharp like that of a predator that had already been waiting for its prey. 40%, he said bluntly. 5 million today, 7 million returned in 6 months. Immediate collateral. The young man swallowed hard and with trembling hands offered the deed to his house. Zan Yanggong took the document, gave it a quick glance and scoffed, clearly bored. "Old house 3-4 million at most," he commented. "That doesn't cover 5 million. Desperation took over the young man's face. He begged for 4 million, saying that a fortune teller had guaranteed him absurd luck, that he would double the money and pay Zan Yanggong. That only confirmed the obvious, just another gambling addict ready to destroy himself. He stood up, pretending to leave. 3 million, take it or leave it. At that moment, something changed. The young man's panic gave way to an almost sick excitement. He accepted immediately. Zan Yanggong sat back down and edited the final terms. Cruel and precise. 3 months? 900,000. If you don't pay, the house is mine. The young man agreed, but for a brief second his expression darkened. He raised his head and looked directly at Zan Yanggong. "There is one specific condition." 10 minutes later, everything was settled. A huge and surprisingly polite henchman escorted the young man to the exit. Outside, the sun was still shining strongly. The young man pulled out his phone and checked the notification. 3,500,000 Yanggong had just been deposited into his account. At that exact moment, the mask fell. He laughed out loud, calling Jada an idiot. In his mind, the truth was clear. He did not intend to repay that loan. The apocalypse would begin in 1 month. Every cent would be used to prepare. He refused to relive the misery of his past life. The memories came like an avalanche. The gigantic solar eruption that struck the Earth, the collapse of the ecosystem, temperatures exceeding 50 degrees, 30 days of scorching hell, a world in ruins where mutant beasts fed on the remains of humanity. Back in the office, Zan Yanggong held the contract with satisfaction. To him, it was just a successful deal. "Gamblers do not deserve to have a house," he commented with disdain. Behind him, the assistant seemed uneasy. "Boss, that house is worth more than 4 million. He accepted only 3.5 immediately. Could this be a trap? Zan Yanggong, addicts would sell even their own family for chips. A house means nothing. I run a casino. I want to squeeze everything out of him." The assistant nodded. As the sun began to set, Sean walked down the street, looking at his phone with an amused smile, thinking about how there were still good people in the world. The money had come far too easily. Interest did not matter. He had taken loans from all the loan sharks in Lu City in a single day. His gaze was sinister. He would never pay. Sean's thoughts returned to the future. The dry land, the dead vegetation, society collapsing. In that world, supplies were worth more than gold. Whoever controlled the resources controlled everything. This time, he would be the king of the apocalypse. He remembered billionaires and superstars begging like dogs for a piece of sausage or a sip of water, while those who failed died in the gutters. Now reborn, he had time and he had money. A murmur caught his attention. 2 women were standing in front of a shop commenting about a luxury ice cream called Sugar Assassin, complaining about the absurd price. Sean stopped and stared at the display window. The memory of Luan King surfaced bitterly. He remembered saving money to buy that same ice cream for her, realizing now that it had been a greater waste than feeding a dog. He pushed the thought aside and went in. "I want 10 of each flavor," he said calmly. The women were shocked, whispering among themselves, asking if he could afford it, commenting on how handsome he looked spending money. The attendant, suspicious, asked if he was serious. "These are high-end products," she warned. "It would easily exceed 20,000. Before Shane could respond, a woman with reddish-brown hair laughed with disdain. "With those clothes, if you pay all that, I will kneel and bow to you." Shan slowly turned. His gaze was cold and sharp. "Are you sure?" She was intimidated for a moment but kept her stance, questioning who he thought he was. Shan gave a faint smile. "I gave you a way out. You did not take it. Today, nothing will stop you from kneeling." The woman exploded in shouts, but Shan simply ignored her. He turned his phone toward the attendant. The balance on the screen exceeded 20 million yans. "Pack everything. I will take it." The attendant, trembling, could only say she would call the manager. Shortly after, Feng appeared, clearly stunned. Shan asked him to calculate the price of everything in the shop, and said there was no need to keep the place open for other customers. Feng could hardly believe what he was hearing. The value of the displayed items reached 70,000, but with the warehouse stock, the total exceeded 1 million. For Shan, that was nothing. I will clear everything out, he said. I want enough ice cream to eat at home when the apocalypse arrives. He transferred 300,000 as a deposit and requested immediate delivery. Feng almost bowed, calling him Brother Shan, radiant. Deal closed. Shan then turned to the two women, smiling with absolute calm. You can choose any ice cream you want. Shan opened his arms naturally, as if that were the most obvious thing in the world, and announced that everything was on him. Then he introduced himself calmly, letting the name fall in the air like a seal of authority. Shan Shah. The looks around changed instantly. Admiration, envy, curiosity, whispers spread, commenting on his sudden wealth, his confident posture, his above-average appearance. For a brief moment, he seemed like just another rich young man showing off power. Then his expression hardened, the smile disappeared as if it had never existed. Shan looked directly at the woman again. His voice remained calm, but now it was cold, cutting. He clarified that the offer was for everyone present, except for her. And he reminded her without raising his tone that he was still waiting for her to kneel. The air grew heavy, the woman turned pale. The arrogance that had once overflowed dissolved in seconds. She tried to respond, tried to laugh, tried to keep her composure, but the words would not come out. The pressure, the looks around her, and her own promise became unbearable. His eyes tremble, his eyes fill with tears. At last, the body gives in. She sobs, her legs fail, and she falls to her knees before Shan. He looks down at her, his gaze as cold as steel. Without pity, he asks why she was so arrogant, if she could not sustain it. The question does not demand an answer. The silence already says everything. Later, when the sun begins to set and the city slows down, Shan is sitting alone on a bench in the park. The environment is calm, almost too peaceful for someone like him. He slowly savors an expensive ice cream, appreciating the texture and the flavor. He admits to himself that the assassin brand truly lives up to its reputation in Luju. When he finishes, he raises his hand. The air around it distorts as if it were being torn apart. A black void appears, silent and deep. Shan places the shopping bag inside that dimensional space without any effort. He observes his own hand. Thoughtful, that space keeps everything in stasis. Fresh food forever. Hot drinks eternally. And absolute power. What surprises him is the moment when this awakened. In his original timeline, abilities only appeared after the apocalypse began. He did not expect his spatial ability to come with him when he returned to the past. A slow smile appears on his lips. He understands at that moment that this power will be his greatest trump card. With it, he will be able to control all resources. He visualizes celebrities, tycoons, and idols begging for a piece of food, for a drop of water. In practice, his mind was already moving on to the next step. A safe refuge, refrigerated storage, weapons, energy reserves. He sighs, aware of the colossal work that awaits him. The phone vibrates. The name on the screen makes his eyes darken. Luan King saved his little fairy. Shan lets out a short, mocking smile. What bad luck. She is already calling. Just seeing that name makes bitter memories emerge. After his parents' death, she appeared as a savior, an angel in his most fragile moment, but that had always been a lie. In reality, Luan King only wanted the inheritance. She demanded a luxury apartment in the city center, paid in full in her name. She demanded an absurd dowry of 880,000 and manipulated him day after day. She even encouraged him to sell the family's ancestral house, calling it old, useless, about to collapse. He clearly remembers the final betrayal. In his past life, he gave in, sold the house, handed everything over, and when the apocalypse arrived and resources disappeared, Luan King sold him without hesitation to a gang leader, offering him his material in exchange for protection. Shan feels the fury rise. He remembers having done everything to protect her, only to be treated like a dog. He remembers his own grotesque death, devoured, without even dying whole. Now a cold smile spreads across his face. Since she delivered herself, he will settle this debt once and for all. In the luxury hotel, he answers the call with a gentle voice, almost affectionate, asking with rehearsed concern why she is calling, and if something happened. On the other side, Luan King, wrapped in a bathrobe, plays the role of the pitiful one. She lies, saying that she was with friends and lost her gold necklace. The blame is carefully placed while she hides a dark smile. Shan plays along effortlessly, tells her not to worry that he will buy another one. Then he casually adds that he will buy 10 so she can alternate. Luan King is shocked. That does not match the Shan she knew. He had never been so rich. He improvises an explanation. He made a lot of money with cryptocurrencies and wants to spend it all on her. She grows suspicious, asks if it was not a scam, but he insists that the next round will bring him a fortune. He says he is planning something huge, then comes the hook. He explains that he is gathering money for a big investment, but that the loan requires a witness. He asks for her help, offering 5% of the amount as payment. The trap is set. Luan King leaves the bathroom wrapped only in a towel. An older bald man complains about the delay. She immediately changes her posture, hugs the man, calls him dear, asks him to wait a little longer. Inside, she calculates coldly. 5,000 for one night with that old man, 50,000 just for a signature from Shan, with no risk at all. After all, Shan had always been a coward. He would never dare to deceive her. After ending the call, Shan stares at the phone. His eyes turn red. The smile becomes terrifying. He whispers almost like a promise, "I will be waiting for you." Shortly after, he is standing in front of a large residential building. He observes the structure carefully. Already imagining every modification, he decides right there, that will be his personal fortress. Accompanied by a visibly nervous contractor, Shan points at the building and sets a non-negotiable deadline: 1 month. He demands windows with bulletproof glass and hidden security mesh, external walls reinforced with 3 meters of concrete capable of withstanding an earthquake of magnitude 8. The contractor types frantically, sweating. Shan remains relentless: a self-sustaining ecosystem, oxygen guaranteed for 72 hours, water recycling, explosion-proof doors with biometric and mechanical locks, roof covered with solar panels, independent generator, military-grade air filtration system. He summarizes coldly: "In 1 month I want a combat-ready bunker." The contractor is shocked for a moment and thinks Shan is just another paranoid doomsday prepper, someone who has watched too much science fiction. The hesitation is evident. Shan notices. He mentions the man's resume, his experience in security for billionaires. The contractor stammers, saying the requirements are so specific that they will cost a fortune, but then greed speaks louder. He begins to see Shan only as a wealthy eccentric with money to spare. Shan interrupts, shows his phone. "A transfer of 1 million yuan. This is the deposit," he says calmly. "Now tell me the final amount." The contractor swallows hard. The contractor can barely contain his excitement. Behind the professional smile, his mind is already racing far ahead, calculating absurd figures. In his eyes, Shan is just another eccentric rich man, the perfect type of client who can make him a millionaire for the rest of his life. The handshake between the two is firm, decisive. "You can rest assured," says the contractor with rehearsed conviction. "I am strict with materials. I will build something truly impenetrable." The words sound right, but both hide intentions they would never say out loud. The contractor is already planning how to inflate every cost, squeezing out every cent. Shan, in turn, laughs inwardly. He knows that when the apocalypse arrives, there will be no final payment at all. With the fortress underway, his mind moves on to the next step. The survival list begins to take shape. Medicine, food, essential items. All of that is easy. Money solves it. But his expression darkens when he thinks about the real danger. It is not the extreme heat, nor the collapse of the natural world. It is the human being. When society collapses, melee weapons will not be enough. Hunger turns people into beasts, and whoever has firearms will dictate the rules. This will be the hardest resource to obtain. Walking down the street, Shan picks up his smartphone and sends a short message to a contact from the black market, asking about direct sources and discreet channels. The reply comes almost instantly. An address, 8 in the evening, no delays. Hours later, he arrives at the agreed location. The scene makes him alert. An old residential neighborhood, narrow streets, people coming and going, a place too busy for an illegal meeting. Something feels out of place. Then the silence is broken by hurried footsteps. A young woman appears running in the dim light, her face filled with panic. 3 thugs chase her closely, shouting insults and threats. She seems completely desperate, not knowing where to go. When she sees Shan, she runs toward him. The men catch up and surround the two. The leader shouts, accusing the girl of cheating in his territory, asking if she is tired of living. His voice is aggressive in the dark street. Trembling, the young woman grabs Shan's arm, begging him to save her. He lowers his gaze and freezes. He recognizes that face instantly. Looking, the confusion hits him like a shock. What is she doing in a place like this? The standoff intensifies. 3 armed men, a narrow street. One mistake can cost a life. One of the thugs points at Shan, ordering him to step aside. The other grabs Lu brutally. The situation explodes when one of them pulls her hair hard, throwing her head back. The scream of pain cuts through the air. "Lu," he says, his voice firm. The memory drags him to the past. At school she was radiant, the center of attention, the so-called genius goddess, admired by countless boys, a distant figure, almost untouchable. The present returns violently. The slick-haired leader tightens his grip on her hair and shouts that he will only let her go if she hands over the money. The Mohawk thug licks his lips, laughing, and suggests that if there is no money she can pay with her body. That is enough. Shan takes a step forward. An oppressive aura erupts around him. He stares at the 3 men with absolute coldness. "Let her go." The thugs and Lu are confused. They do not know who he is nor where that invisible pressure came from. One of them, consumed by rage, charges first, shouting insults and promising to cripple him for playing the hero. Shan does not move, his eyes glow red. In the next instant, the punch cuts through the air and misses. Shan dodges with absurd ease, letting the attack pass as if he had predicted it. Before the thug can react, Shan grabs his wrist, the strength crushing. The scream echoes as the bones give in. Without hesitation, Shan delivers a brutal punch to the man's face, throwing him against the debris of the alley. The impact is dry, violent. The others watch in shock. At that moment, a translucent window appears before Shan's eyes. The system detects intense negative emotions, fear, anger, despair. A notification confirms the activation of negative emotion collection. He freezes for a second. A system, something he never had in his past life. The gang leader panics, grabs Liu, tears her shirt, and shouts that he will kill her if Shan takes one more step. Then something falls from above. A brick drops from a building above and strikes the leader's face with brutal force. The man falls like a sack of stones, completely unconscious. The 2 remaining thugs freeze. A figure jumps from the shadows of the building. A man wearing a floral shirt lands with confidence and lets out a mocking laugh. ridiculing them for intimidating a defenseless girl. Furious, the two attack at the same time. Shan raises his arm and easily blocks a punch. At the same time, the man in the floral shirt spins his body and delivers a devastating high kick to the other thug. A baton comes toward him, but Shan dodges, making the opponent stumble and counterattacks with a precise punch to the bald man's face. The two fight in perfect sync. Bodies fly. The enemies are thrown to the ground without any reaction. The man in the floral shirt steps on one of their chests without mercy. Silence. Shan remains standing, his eyes still glowing red. He stares at the defeated thugs. Get lost. They do not argue. They run away in terror. The system notifies Shan as their fear and despair are harvested. He feels an unexpected satisfaction. This unlocks an expansion in his spatial storage. A subtle smile appears on his lips. The ability to harvest emotions is interesting. He approaches Lu, fallen on the ground, and extends his hand, helps her stand up and calmly comments that her problem ended up helping him achieve his objective. He asks if she is hurt. Blushing, she holds her torn clothes, clearly embarrassed, stammers her thanks and says she has urgent matters. She leaves in a hurry while Shan tells her to be careful. When she disappears down the street, the man in the floral shirt approaches, smiling. Nice entrance, saving a beauty like that. He introduces himself as Mukong. Shan observes him for a moment and then understands. He is exactly the contact he was looking for. Mukong lets out a short laugh and finally reveals that he was the expected buyer. He comments on the coincidence of the meeting as if it were the work of fate. Then, he completely changes his posture, takes a step back, bends his knees, assumes an exaggerated martial arts stance, and raises his hand as if he were in front of an ancestral duel. The heavenly king above the sky, the tiger of the earth guards the gate, he shouts in a solemn tone, as if reciting a secret mantra. He watches Shan closely, waiting for an equally fitting response, a confirmation code, but receives none of it. Shan just stares at him in silence for a few seconds, then, with total indifference says, "Idiot." The air freezes. At that same moment, an invisible notification appears to Shan. Emotions of perplexity and embarrassment have been collected from Mukong. The seller's smile falters. He laughs loudly too quickly, clearly trying to cover it up. Hey, calm down. It is just a joke, he says, scratching his head. Shan does not bother to respond, puts his arm around his shoulders and leads him away, as if they were already old acquaintances, making it clear that now it is time to talk business. Later, that night, the two arrive at an isolated, silent house, hidden from the movement of the city. Inside, Mukong carefully opens a metal case. Inside, a dark, cold, heavy pistol rests. He explains that it is a Russian model known for its durability, reliable even under extreme conditions. The warning comes right after. Ammunition is hard to obtain. Shan picks up the weapon, runs it through his hand, tests the balance. Mukong watches closely, evaluating every movement, and remarks that he looks like someone who has already fought for real. He then offers a friendly price. Shan spins the pistol naturally, a mischievous smile appearing on his face. I want a free suppressor with warranty and extra ammunition. The atmosphere becomes tense. Mukong widens his eyes, in disbelief. His voice rises immediately. Have you gone crazy? I am already giving you a friendly price. He protests, trembling with frustration. Anyone else would pay double and you still want more? And a warranty too? He points at Shan, furious. This is not a household appliance. If it is like this, why don't you just rob me already? While Mukong boils with anger, Shan's system calmly registers shock, frustration, and disbelief successfully collected. Satisfied, Shan smiles, raises his hands in surrender, and steps back. Forget it, keep the original price. He transfers the money without further discussion. Deal closed. As he leaves, Shan reflects that now he has supplies for the fortress and a weapon. Only one thing is missing. That night, a luxurious hotel stands out under the city lights. At the top, in an elegant penthouse, Luan King observes the urban landscape wearing a red evening dress. The door opens silently. Shan approaches from behind and hugs her. She complains about his weight, and soon after changes her tone. This loan plan is really risk-free, right? Shan responds naturally and in a rehearsed manner. He says that her signature is just a formality, and that he would never do anything to harm her. Inside, Luan King smiles faintly. She remembers when he even sold his own blood to buy a bag for her. In her eyes, Shan had always been too submissive to even think about deceiving her. Later, in the office of the loan shark, Luan King sits in front of Zan Yangyang. He praises her determination while observing her every move. When she begins to sign the contract, his gaze becomes predatory. She believes she is only being a guarantor. In truth, the entire debt is being transferred to her name. Zan Yangyang lights a cigar, smiling with malice. Already imagining the moment when she will fail to make the payments, his gaze slides over her body with lust. He decides that if the money does not come, she will pay in another way. Shan leans back on the sofa, watching everything with satisfaction. Luan King's greed was exactly what he needed. Her signature works like a deed of sale, securing the final funds for his safe house. Days later, Shan is outside his fortified building with the contractor. The man assures that the construction follows military standards: thermal insulation, acoustic isolation, protection against explosions. He even boasts that the structure could survive even a nuclear explosion. Satisfied, Shan hands over the payment. The contractor accepts with a greedy smile, already asking about future jobs without imagining that this money will soon be worth absolutely nothing. Alone inside the fortress, Shan waits with a tablet in his hands. Then the news appears on the television. Unprecedented solar activity. The anchor speaks in a grave tone about waves of extreme and continuous heat, warning the population. Shan calmly cleans his pistol, bringing the weapon close to his face, his expression dark and focused. Finally it begins. Bathed in the red and threatening light of the environment, he holds the weapon close to his body. The apocalypse has begun. Before we continue, you who are watching the video now, take the opportunity to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are not already subscribed. Also check the bell and consider becoming a member if you want to support our work. It is very cheap, it helps us a lot as well. Hype the video as much as you can. And that said, let's get back to the story because it is simply very good. He walks to the window. In the sky, a colossal solar eruption sets the horizon on fire, bathing the city in fiery light. The television announces global temperatures reaching 45 degrees. It recommends that everyone remain at home. The heat is immediate. Sweat runs down Shan's face. He knows. This is only the beginning. The entire city feels like an oven. Civilians are already suffering. A woman throws water on her face trying to relieve her burning skin, leaning on the balcony, complaining about the unbearable heat and wondering how long it will last. On the street, a chubby shop owner, wearing a floral shirt, shouts through a megaphone. He says that temperatures will only rise. He warns about the lack of supplies and encourages the neighbors to buy his last batch before rationing. He wipes the sweat from his forehead, smiling. For him, this is not a tragedy. It is an opportunity. Some women approach asking for a discount on the watermelons. One of them crouches down to examine the fruit. The shopkeeper leans forward, completely ignoring the request, staring at her body with a lewd and repulsive smile. The world has already begun to show its true face. The chubby man smiles in a slimy way and leans over the counter, lowering his voice. If you take 2 watermelons, I will give a little discount, and even throw in a pack of tissues. His gaze slides shamelessly, then he continues as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At night you can go to my house. The air conditioning is good, you can cool off properly. The women look at each other, clearly uncomfortable, and refuse almost at the same time. His smile does not fade. On the contrary, he leans in even more, invading the personal space of one of them, his face getting too close. Buy it now. He presses with a low and threatening voice. Tomorrow there might not even be food to sell. The attitude changes completely when 2 men ask for a lower price for water. The shop owner points at them angrily. This is a small business. There is no bargaining. Do not like it? Leave. While he carries a box of supplies with effort, he does not notice the figure standing in the shadows, watching everything in silence. Shan. His gaze is as cold as ice. As soon as he recognizes the man, an old and bitter memory explodes in his mind. The memory pulls him violently back to the past. The same shop, the same voice. Li Defu shouting at a crowd, accusing a younger Shan of theft. He said he had caught him in the act. He twisted the boy's arm without mercy. When the boy explained, crying, that he had only picked up an item that had fallen on the ground, Li Defu mocked him, refused to listen, and demanded payment. The people around whispered, judged, commented on the poor upbringing of that boy. The forced silence turned into guilt in their eyes. Overwhelmed, terrified. The young Shan cried and stammered that he had not stolen anything. No one believed him. Now the silence of the shop feels deafening. Shan enters calmly and observes a price tag. A simple pack of onion-flavored potato chips costs 50. Below, in small letters, manager's recommendation. He picks up the pack and raises an eyebrow. Is this made of gold? He asks in a sarcastic tone, or does it prevent heat stroke to cost so much? Sweating profusely, Li Defu turns around irritated. At the same instant, the system activates. Disdain, collected. 3 more points. The shopkeeper's patience runs out. He snatches the pack from Shan's hands. Get out of here if you cannot pay. The system ticks again. Irritation. 6 more points. Shan just smiles faintly. He leans slightly forward. Looks like you are gathering many treasures. He comments in a low voice. Be careful with thieves. Li Defu freezes for a second, confused, then explodes. Who do you think you are? He shouts, pointing his finger. Are you crazy? This heat fried your brain. Shan remains absolutely calm. Still sleeping badly? Urinating at night? Weakness in the knees? Li Defu's anger falters. He swallows hard. Yes, he admits nervously. Could he be some kind of master? Before he realizes it, Shan approaches and grabs his face firmly. Your yin energy is dark, he declares in a grave tone. A bad omen. In the next instant, the slap comes dry and violent. Li Defu staggers, stunned, his eyes unfocused. Shan rubs his chin like a doctor analyzing a patient. Deficiency, he declares. Li Defu regains his senses in dry fury. He tries to kick Shan, shouting insults against his family. Shan dodges with absurd ease, picks up a lollipop from the counter, unwraps it calmly and speaks in a mocking tone. Take care of your health. Anger is bad. As he leaves, he throws a coin on the ground. At this rate, you might die young. The metallic clink echoes. The system bursts in red. Extreme anger collected. 20 more points. Hours later, a black cat runs across the dark entrance of the supermarket. Shan stands before the glass doors, reflecting on his past life. How many times did he swallow his anger? How many times was he trampled? Not this time. He checks the system. The emotions collected from Li Defu are enough. Without hesitation, he activates the ability. The spatial storage expands by more than 200 cubic meters. A black vortex spins in his palm, hungry, distorting the air around it. A confident smile appears on his lips. The next day, birds sing peacefully. Li Defu walks toward the shop, unaware of what awaits him. In the nearby bushes, Shan observes him. Lidafu stops abruptly. His jaw drops. He runs inside and freezes. The shelves, once packed with overpriced goods, are completely empty. Nothing, only bare metal structures. His face darkens. His mind collapses trying to understand what happened. Who stole everything? He shouts, holding his head. Far away from there, in his safe house, Shan watches the collapse live. The system notifies. Intense suffering generated 66 points of negative emotion. He opens a cold soda, drinks calmly and smiles. A small revenge, perhaps, but deeply satisfying. Inside the warehouse, Lidafu screams in panic, demanding to know who stole all his stock. During the night, overwhelmed, he falls to his knees, screaming in frustration. A crowd of confused customers watches. They wonder if the supermarket is really empty, or if Lidafu is pretending to raise prices. Later, two women comment on a rumor that someone saw a dark shadow floating in the warehouse last night, and Lidafu turns pale. Terrified by the possibility that his shop is haunted, an invisible system interface appears, counting the negative emotions of the crowd. Shan watches with a satisfied smile, eating chips while observing the steady production of emotions from Lidafu. Shan eats his snack, but his expression becomes sinister. His eyes glow red as he decides to add more fuel to the fire to harvest more emotions. He passes by Lidafu, commenting out loud how good the chips smell to draw attention. Lidafu stares at the pack in Shan's hands, realizing that the packaging matches the missing stock. The shock turns into fury when he believes Shan is eating his stolen merchandise. Shan raises the pack, mocks Lidafu, asking if the chips are made of gold to justify the high price. Shan provokes, saying that gathering treasures attracts thieves. Furious, Lidafu slaps his hand away. Enraged, Lidafu grabs Shan's wrist, demanding to know where he got the snacks and accusing him of theft. Shan pretends to be shocked. Then, he calmly asks if the furious man has any proof to support the accusations. Smiling faintly, Shan warns the owner that making false accusations without proof has consequences. He mocks how clean the empty supermarket is, and insultingly offers the remaining chips to the man. Desperate, Lidafu decides to use Shan as a scapegoat. He shakes him violently, blaming him for the theft because he complained about the prices the day before. The system registers a spike of anger from the shop owner. Shan turns to the crowd and asks if Lidafu thinks chips are sold there. He states that the owner is incriminating an innocent customer. The spectators agree that potato chips are common. Lidafu, confused by the fact that the coward had suddenly become so confident, begins to sweat. Shan proposes a bet. If Lidafu finds the stolen items in his house, he will pay 10 times the value. Otherwise, Lidafu will have to hand over his backup generator. Blinded by anger, Lidafu accepts, bringing his face close to Shan's and swearing on the spot. The group goes to Shan's residence with the crowd following closely. Inside, Lidafu is shocked by the opulence of the place. He discovers in astonishment that Shan is incredibly rich. He observes with admiration the expensive decoration and the crystal chandelier. He is also surprised to find a wardrobe full of high-end clothes. Lidafu searches frantically, checking the refrigerator and a safe full of gold bars, but finds no stolen chips. Panic sets in when Lidafu realizes his mistake. Shan mocks him, asking if he wants him to tear up the floor. Humiliated, Lidafu says there is no need to search further and tries to leave in a hurry. Shan's system registers an increase in embarrassment. Shan stops him by grabbing his shirt and reminding him of the generator bet. Turning to the crowd, Shan pressures the sweating shopkeeper, asking if he intends to go back on his word. Cornered, Lidafu asks Shan to step back and let it go. Completely unforgiving, Shan asks why he did not back down when he accused him of theft before. The system registers a spike in impatience. Hearing the spectators mock his dishonesty, Lidafu loses control. He shouts that he gave Shan a chance and throws a punch, but Shan easily catches him. Shan twists the shopkeeper's wrist. Lidafu screams in pain, being forced to fall to his knees. Shouting that his hand is going to break, the system detects a huge spike of pain and unable to endure it. Lidafu hurriedly promises to move the generator immediately. Shan stares at him coldly, telling him to go quickly while the heat rises. He points out that without the generator, Lidafu will suffer during the power rationing that is about to come. The system rewards Shan by counting more points for humiliation, pain, and fear. Suddenly, Shan notices a notification. His phone rings, displaying Luan King. Luan King's face appears on the screen. Furious, she complains that debt collectors have been following her for 2 days. Shan seems indifferent while Luan shouts, demanding to know why she is being chased after signing his formal documents on the video call. Furious, Luan King demands answers, asking why members of important gangs are after her, accusing Shan of lying, pretending to be heartbroken. Shan walks through the apartment and asks why she does not trust him after everything he sacrificed for her, acting deeply hurt. Inside, he smiles faintly. He realizes that the perverts from Zan Yang's gang are even more impatient to collect the debt than he expected. Standing next to the refrigerator, he casually asks Luan King if the gang knows where she lives and what they said. Stressed, biting her thumb, Luan King says they do not know her address because she took alternative routes. She warns Shan not to play tricks. Shan calmly tells her not to overthink it, suggesting that she may have mistaken strangers for gang members. Meanwhile, Shan remains in his cool, air-conditioned room, where a luxurious meal of grilled salmon with salad and cold soda awaits him. In contrast to the heat outside, Luan King's expression changes from anger to shock when she sees the food on the table through the camera, staring in disbelief. She asks how he still has fresh food like that. Shan shows a can of Coca-Cola to the camera, boasting that he has much more in stock. Intrigued, Luan King asks if he really has many supplies. Sitting on the bed, her attitude changes. Since provisions are scarce, she wonders if Shan really hit the jackpot. Shan takes a sip of his cold drink and teases her, saying that she needs to eat something in this heat. Shan takes a bite of the fresh salmon right in front of the camera. Luan King is stunned to see such high-quality food. Overcome by hunger, she desperately wishes she could eat that meal. Shan pretends concern, asking if she has enough to eat while watching her act vulnerable. He lies, saying that he is afraid of living completely alone. Sensing an opportunity, Luan King smiles in a manipulative way. She states that the collectors are still nearby, acting in a seductive manner. She asks Shan if she can stay at his place for a few days, smoking a cigarette with an arrogant air, suggesting that she can keep him company in exchange for shelter. Shan smiles while eating, thinking that she took the bait and mocking her for being so cheap. He plays along, noting that she never let him visit her before. He offers to pick her up that night when it cools down, if she gives him an address, and Luan King discards the past, claiming that the situation is special, since he is her boyfriend and should protect her. She agrees, and sends her location. Shan looks at the phone with a dark expression, telling her to wait. Obedient at home, unaware of the trap, Luan King relaxes, mocking Shan. She believes he is still a fool, who wags his tail at any display of affection. Shan smiles at the phone, amused by her change in attitude. The woman who once acted superior, now gives her address just for a little food. His thoughts are interrupted by loud and aggressive knocks on the front door. Outside, a middle-aged woman with a small boy knocks, demanding that Shan open up. Shan walks to the entrance to listen. He opens the door and finds his neighbor, Aunt Wang. And he greets her with sarcasm, asking what she wants. Aunt Wang tries to force her way inside to feel the cool air. She claims that her air conditioner broke and the child cannot handle the heat. Using the excuse of being a neighbor to demand entry, Shan pushes her out. Finally, he reminds her of when he was little and collected bottles with his mother. She used to call them beggars and had security throw them out. A flashback shows the cruel scene in which Aunt Wang humiliated them while they searched through trash. Back in the present, Aunt Wang is furious. She dismisses her past cruelty, shouting that it happened years ago and should not matter now. She yells at him for holding a grudge and accuses him of having no compassion. Shan agrees sarcastically, saying that although he has no compassion, he has air conditioning. Shan slams the door shut. Outside, Aunt Wang pounds on the door in fury. She shouts insults, saying that he deserved his parents' early death for being ungrateful. Her fury activates Shan's system, which detects spikes of negative emotion classified as anger. Inside the apartment, Shan stands still in the dark. He remains silent with an indifferent expression, ignoring the insults. He goes to the table and swaps the phone's SIM card to ensure anonymity on the computer. He calls a contact saved as Ri-Gang. Shan informs that he has Luan King's address. He sends the location, emphasizing that she lives alone and is easy to find while he remains safe in his fortress. He walks to the balcony, looking at the city. He says Luan King's name and declares that the show is about to begin. Meanwhile, Luan King admires herself in the mirror, confident that she will soon move into the comfort of Shan's air-conditioned fortress. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she gets lost in arrogant fantasies, imagining Shan kneeling to serve her, convinced that a carefree life of luxury is the only thing worthy of her status. Completely relaxed, she lies down and lights a cigarette, waiting for Shan. Suddenly there are knocks at the door, assuming her fool has arrived. She runs to it with a fake smile, opens the door and immediately mocks the visitor for being so eager to please her. However, her smile disappears instantly, replaced by pure shock and horror. Instead of Shan, she sees the mafia boss Zan Yang and his men. Terrified, she stammers, asking how they found her. Zan Yang slaps her mercilessly, reminding her that the money owed to the Ri-Gang is due today. Luan King falls to the ground in panic. She screams that Shan borrowed the money and tricked her into signing the papers, begging them to find him. Indifferent to her excuses, Zan Yang raises the contract and shouts that since she signed it, she is responsible for the debt. The mafia boss orders his men to search the apartment and take everything of value. While the henchmen carry away the furniture, a desperate Luan King screams for them to stop. She insists that she is calling Shan and that he will arrive soon to pay. However, Zan Yang sits casually on the sofa, gathering her luxury bags and jewelry onto the table. And Luan King stands before him, terrified, while he examines her belongings. Zan Yang lifts a bag with disdain, commenting that these scraps do not even cover the interest on the debt. With a greedy smile, he reminds her that his men did not come in this heat just to leave empty-handed. He stands up, casting a large shadow over her. Luan King steps back in fear, begging him not to come closer and insisting that the money is with Shan. Zan Yanglim maintains a cruel smile, savoring the situation. In panic, Luan King tries to bargain, revealing that Shan has a stockpile of supplies. She asks them to wait, saying that he is coming to get her soon. She says it is Shan's number, but an automated voice informs that it is unavailable. Sweat runs down her face. While hearing the recording, she stares at the phone screen, seeing the unanswered call. Her face turns pale as she realizes the truth. She stammers, saying that no one is answering. Losing control, a look of pure panic takes over her eyes, not understanding how this could happen. Desperate to keep the gang away, she forces a trembling smile, tries to convince them that he is just busy and promises to call again immediately. Zan Yangling loses patience and reveals the cruel truth. She is stupid for not realizing that Shan tricked her into signing the debt and thus escaped. Luan King freezes, pale with shock as she realizes she was completely deceived. Suddenly, Zanyang brutally grabs her by the hair, making her scream in pain. Luan King tries to save herself, shouting that they need to find Shan, because he has valuable supplies. Ignoring her screams, the mafia boss drags her across the room toward the bedroom. The bedroom door slams shut with a heavy bang. Outside, Luan King's destroyed phone lies on the floor. Meanwhile, Shan is comfortably seated in his fortified, climate-controlled refuge, holding a glass of wine. He thinks about Luan King, satisfied that she is finally experiencing the suffering he planned. Outside, the city is dark, but his apartment remains like a solitary beacon of light and safety. Back in Luan King's apartment, the act is over. Zanyang sits on the edge of the bed, shirtless, with his back turned. Luan King is curled up on the bed, crying. Zanyang picks up a cup of coffee, interested in Luan King's desperate plea. He leans in, forcing her to look at him, and demands that she repeat exactly what supplies Shan has, breathing heavily as he tightens his grip on her neck. Luan King frantically lists Shan's luxuries, air conditioning, cold drinks, and piles of food. She cries, saying that he has everything. She emphasizes the amount of supplies, hoping that this information will spare her from more pain. Zanyang's eyes narrow with curiosity. He looks at her and says that although she has nothing left, she pointed to the right target. Satisfied, Zanyang throws her back onto the bed. He realizes that he has found a big catch and that making Shan the new target is the priority. He stands in front of the sobbing woman with a greedy smile, planning how to seize Shan's fortress. He orders the gang to leave, ready to move on to the next target. The door closes, leaving the apartment silent and destroyed. Alone in the dark, Luan King curls up, covered in bruises. Her tears turn into pure hatred. Trembling with rage, she curses Shan, swearing that he will die horribly for deceiving her. Outside Shan's apartment, a large group of people disturbs the silent night. They march with hostile intentions, their footsteps echoing in unison. Aunt Wang and her treacherous neighbor lead the group. She guides the gang to Shan's house, tempting them with his air conditioning and food, calling him a selfish beast for not sharing. The scarred leader thanks Aunt Wang for her help, promising to reward her well once they take the supplies. Overjoyed, Aunt Wang calls the mob boss Brother Junk and thanks him for his generosity. She imagines Shan begging for mercy while the gang protects her. Desperate to survive, with a malicious smile, she longs to see his arrogance crushed. The group gathers on the sidewalk below Shan's fortress. However, the scarred leader pauses. He looks at the building, sensing that something is wrong. His instincts tell him that this boy is more prepared than they imagined, but his men are less cautious. A blonde thug with a baseball bat eagerly volunteers to break down the door. Ignoring the potential danger, the thug shouts to attack and runs toward the entrance. When he reaches the perimeter, his foot triggers a hidden high-voltage trap. Blue electricity strikes him, and he screams in pain, trembling violently. The thug falls to the ground, convulsing. The scarred leader, not realizing the trap, looks with contempt and asks, "Why did that trash freeze?" Another gang member goes to help his companion. When he touches the thug's shoulder, the electric current hits both of them. They scream for help as a flash illuminates their silhouettes. Aunt Wang and the scarred leader freeze, shocked by Shan's terrifying defense system. Suddenly, a loudspeaker on the roof is activated. The scarred leader and Aunt Wang look up, confused. Instead of a siren, a cheerful song about good luck and happiness blasts through the speakers. The lively music plays in a romantic tone while the trap continues to operate. The silhouettes of the gang members are illuminated by blue electricity as the song mocks their fate. Realizing the danger, the scarred leader and Aunt Wang step back, cursing in fear. Inside, Shan's system continues collecting intense negative emotions, such as shock and panic from the people outside. Shan is comfortably seated, eating a popsicle and watching the monitors. He speaks into the microphone, mocking the gang, wishing them good luck for falling into his trap. Outside, furious, the scarred leader points his gun at the building, shouting for Shan to return the money. Aunt Wang yells that if he can afford renovations, he can pay his debts, and she insults his upbringing. Shan responds calmly through the loudspeakers. He smiles coldly and says that his apartment is worth $4 million, more than enough to cover the $3.5 million he borrowed. He dismisses them, saying that the house is the payment. He tells them to look for new king for her debt, because it is not his problem. The scarred leader trembles with rage. He knows that supplies are everything now, but Shan's arrogance infuriates him. Shan continues provoking through the intercom, biting into the popsicle. He advises them to leave while he is still in a good mood. His expression then turns cold, as he warns them to stop looking for trouble. His hand hovers over a large red button without hesitation. Shan presses the button. Outside, the trap releases a massive electric discharge across the entire entrance. An X-ray-like vision shows their skeletons lighting up as the electricity hits them. They scream in pain under the relentless shock. Shan's system registers points from their pain and despair. When the electricity ceases, the gang is physically unharmed, but mentally destroyed. They stand there sweating, staring at the building in fear, knowing they cannot get in. The scarred leader steps back, shouting one last threat that his gang will not let this go. Then he flees with his men. Aunt Wang is left behind, her face filled with horror and hatred. She knows her plan to use the gang has failed. After the gang flees, the building remains imposing under a blood-red sky. The intense heat of the concrete turns the outside world into an oven. The next day, the temperature reaches a deadly 52 degrees Celsius. The streets become deserted, boiling under the sun. Inside the fortress, however, it is completely different. Shan relaxes on the couch under the air conditioning, enjoying dried fruits and feeling refreshed. A news alert on the TV warns about the extreme weather. It reports deaths from heat stroke and advises everyone to stay indoors while a red warning flashes on the screen. Shan's rest is interrupted by a notification on his phone. He sees that the residents' group chat is full. Aunt Wang leads the attacks, asking if he is human and accusing him of hoarding supplies while others suffer. Another neighbor calls him selfish. More messages flood the chat. The residents insist that resources should be shared, calling him a murderer for refusing, while others say they are dying from the heat and demand help. He does not explain himself. Shan simply takes a sip of his cold drink. Indifferent. He calmly scrolls through the hate-filled messages with a distant gaze. To him, these insults are resources. His system detects massive spikes of envy and anger coming from the neighbors. A red notification appears. The value of negative emotions has surpassed 1,000 points, and the system begins calculating his rewards. Inside his climate-controlled safe house, Shan stands in front of the open refrigerator, full of fresh food and drinks, provoking the suffering neighbors. He smirks and takes a photo of the supplies. He posts the image in the group, joking that his stock is large, asking who wants some. The neighbors take the bait. Residents beg for a share. Joang shamelessly asks for delivery because of his bad legs, while others arrogantly demand water. Shan's expression turns cold. He replies that he does not run a charity for freeloaders and that he only accepts trades of equivalent value. The neighbor's pleading instantly turns into fury. In the chat, Aunt Wang and the others insult him, calling him selfish and cursing him. With the karma done, having gathered enough negative emotions, Shan leans back on the couch with a fresh apple. Suddenly, a system notification catches his attention. The system announces that his negative emotion value has reached 3,000, unlocking Spatial Slash, a new ability that creates a microscopic rift with a range of 3 meters. Intrigued, Shan activates the ability. He focuses on the apple on the table. With a quick hand motion, he releases the invisible blade, slicing the apple perfectly in half. Shan smiles with a dangerous glint in his eyes, thinking that his survival game has just become even more interesting that night. An orange off-road vehicle abruptly stops on a deserted street in the city. A woman in red high heels steps out. It is Luan King, wearing a black evening dress with arrogance and ready for revenge. Men in suits stand beside the off-road vehicle, where the mafia boss Zanyang sits, releasing smoke as he lights a cigar with an intense gaze. Preparing the attack, Zanyang orders his subordinates to confirm whether that is Shan's address. His men confirm that the target is in the innermost building of the complex to assert control. Zanyang grabs Luan King's rear. He pulls her close and mocks her, asking if her heart will hurt when she sees her former lover destroyed. Luan King plays the role of a devoted lover, leaning seductively and stating that now her heart belongs only to him. She speaks of Shan with complete contempt, calling him useless trash. However, her face twists with fury as she declares that tonight Shan will die. Their conversation is interrupted. Zan Yonggang notices someone approaching the residential area. It is Li Defu, the supermarket owner, along with another neighbor. Driven by greed, they run to the gang offering help to block Shan's escape in hopes of gaining favors. And Zan Yonggang looks at the desperate neighbors and makes a deal. If they help capture Shan, he will share part of the supplies with them. Li Defu, thinking he is safe, leads the gang enthusiastically, calling the mafia boss older brother and promising a shortcut. Meanwhile, other neighbors loot supplies on the street, unaware of the danger approaching. The gang led by Zan Yonggang and Luan King follows Li Defu as he explains the structure of the complex. However, when Li Defu points to his own house to show loyalty, a red-haired thug coldly says that every building now belongs to them. Panic sets in. Aunt Wang and the other neighbors scream as they realize the gang intends to take everything, even from those who help them. The mafia shows no mercy, beating the neighbors and leaving them lying on the ground. They regret the greedy mistake of trusting these beasts. With the neighbors subdued, Zan Yonggang, Luan King, and his thugs prepare to advance toward the main target. They gather at the base of Shan's building, looking up at the tall walls. Suddenly, a massive armchair falls from above, smashing into the asphalt. Before the stunned gang, Shan appears calmly seated in the armchair. He is eating a steak, indifferent to the army at his door. He looks at the mafia and asks with a faint smile if they are all looking for him. Zan Yonggang embraces Luan King and shouts upward, threatening death, demanding supplies in exchange for leaving Shan's body intact. Shan ignores the threat, simply wiping his mouth with a napkin. His eyes glow with a threatening red light as he stares at the mafia boss, reprimanding him for rudely interrupting his meal. Zan Yonggang's eyes widen, shocked by his attitude. Consumed by arrogant fury, Zan Yonggang points at the building and orders his men to cripple Shan. The confrontation turns into a street fight. Shan moves through the gang, easily dodging a punch. Focused, he advances against the group, grabs a thug by the head, and smashes him brutally against the ground. A muscular thug with a mohawk leaps into the air, spinning a spiked flail. Shan anticipates the attack, dodges at the last second as the weapon hits the asphalt, and counterattacks with a powerful kick to the thug's jaw. Seeing his companions fall, another gang member draws an axe. He charges with a deadly strike, but Shan remains calm, activating his spatial slicing ability to intercept the blade. Suddenly, the fight is interrupted when a yellow cylinder falls right in front of Zan Yonggang. And Luan King is also there. It detonates instantly, filling the street with a huge cloud of white smoke. Coughing, Zhang Yonggang realizes it is tear gas. Fearing a trap from a hidden accomplice, he orders his gang to retreat. Immediately within the dense smoke, Shan casually dodges one last blind axe strike. He spots a figure leaning against a building. The stranger comments on the chaos Shan caused but admits that his fighting skills are impressive. Shan looks at the man with suspicion, demanding to know why he is there. The figure steps forward, revealing himself as Mukang, the arms dealer in the floral shirt, tossing a gas cylinder. He asks if Shan is still interested in weapons, stating that he has quality merchandise. Mukang looks enviously at Shan's cooler box. Impressed that he has cold water in this heat, Shan hands him a bottle of water, but asks why he is so far from his own territory. Mukang explains that a rival, Ling Feng, has been stealing his business, and that he was tracking his men. He admits that he followed the rivals there and was surprised by Shan's large stock, assuming that he has special supply channels. Seeing this, Shan's eyes narrow in alert, and he turns sharply, demanding to know what Mukang is implying. Mukang quickly reassures him, clarifying that he wants to propose a partnership and not interfere. He reveals that Ling Feng has a huge stock of purified water, suggesting that Shan steal it, store it, and that Mukang will sell it. Shan considers the offer in the darkness, knowing that rising temperatures will make water more valuable than money. He agrees to cooperate, leaving Mukang in pure shock. Shan demands a profit split of 9-1. Outraged, Mukang shouts that this is robbery. The system notifies Shan that he has harvested a strong emotion of shock. Unmoved, Shan turns to leave, saying there is nothing to discuss. If Mukang is not willing, the desperate Mukang abandons his dignity and grabs Shan's leg, begging for an 8-2 split just to survive. With tears running down his face, Mukang realizes that Shan cannot be persuaded and must have a powerful trump card. Satisfied with his dominance, Shan takes a sip of his drink and accepts the 8-2 split. However, he adds one condition. He will have first choice of all future goods, and Mukang will sell what remains. Resigned, Mukang sighs and agrees. Shan takes command, ordering Mukang to first scout the layout and personnel of the target. Later, the two observe a massive industrial complex. Mukang explains that it is Ling Feng's stronghold. With the facade used for resource trade, the place is heavily guarded, with men armed with shotguns on patrol. Mukang reveals a darker side of the stronghold, pointing out captured women used to provide special services to the leaders. A guard watches over a woman, Luan King, who is now a prisoner. After her betrayal, she appears terrified, defenseless, and wearing a red dress. Mukang points to the rear water storage area, but admits that he has not located the exact tank. Shan lays out his plan. He will conduct reconnaissance alone, and at his signal, Mukang must create a distraction. Mukang doubts how he will manage to move the water alone. Ignoring the doubt, Shan jumps from the observation point toward the cargo containers patrolled by guards below. Once on the ground, Shan moves confidently through the facility, dressed in dark clothing. However, he soon encounters a guard who stops him, noticing his unfamiliar face and demanding identification. Shan calmly shows a card, claiming that boss Ling Feng sent him to inspect the water stock. The guard is not fooled. He laughs, points the shotgun at Shan's back, and mocks the childish trick. The system registers the guard's disdain, adding points for Shan. Shen Shao decides that his spatial cut serves for more than peeling fruits. Coldly, he rests his hand on the guard's shoulder, and suddenly slides the identification card infused with his spatial power. The plastic becomes sharp like a blade, slicing through the guard's neck. He collapses instantly without understanding what happened as blood gushes from the fatal wound. Another guard witnesses the grotesque scene. Shan's system registers a wave of horror and pain from the victim. Overcome by shock, the guard draws a pistol and, shouting in panic, aims at his partner's killer. He opens fire, the muzzle flash illuminating the dark industrial site. But Shen Shao moves with superhuman agility, easily dodging the bullets. He retaliates with a long-range spatial cut. The guard keeps shooting, but he is no match for the invisible blade that slices him in half mid-motion. The system notifies Shan that he has collected enormous points of fear and despair. The gunshots echo through the compound and then silence follows. Reinforcements rush to the scene, including a guard with a rocket launcher. Outnumbered, Shan hides in the shadows against a concrete wall. He remains still while the panicked guards run past without noticing him. While Shan hides, a pale hand suddenly emerges from the shadows behind him. He freezes in shock. Realizing that someone has found his hiding place, the compound is in chaos. Guards secure the area around the massive chemical tanks, hunting the intruder. Armed silhouettes patrol between corrugated metal buildings, weapons raised as they search for an assassin. The figure in the shadows is Lu. She brings a finger to her lips, signaling him to stay silent. She crouches behind a warehouse. The Cheyenne asks why she is there. She explains sadly that the gang captured her and assumes he was also captured. She looks disheveled and hopeless, kneeling on the ground. Shan asks if she knows where the water is. She nods, explaining that by working in cleaning she learned the layout of the place and offers to guide him while creating a distraction. Lu throws a metal bucket into the yard, where it lands making a loud noise. The guards, including the one with the rocket launcher, turn toward the sound, shouting that they found someone and run toward the empty bucket. Taking the opportunity, Lu leads Zenha through a narrow alley. Whispering that this route has no surveillance cameras, Lu guides Shan quickly through dirty alleys. Infested with rats, to avoid the distraction, they stop in front of a large metal door, and Shan tells her to hide and wait for his return. He activates his spatial ability, summoning the black vortex in his hands. He concentrates his energy, preparing to break through the wall with a powerful strike. He throws a direct punch at the structure. The massive impact shatters the brick wall, sending debris flying everywhere as he enters. A patrolling guard is startled by the explosion. He staggers back, looking around, confused, terrified, and sweating. He grabs his weapon and shouts, demanding to know who is there. Shan steps through the opening with his eyes glowing a terrifying red. Without hesitation, he launches a deadly spatial cut. The instant and precise attack slices through the guard's neck before he can pull the trigger. As the guard dies, the system notifies Shan. He has collected enormous points of shock, fear, and pain. Watching from her hiding place, Lu begins to worry. She feels that Shan has been inside for too long and wonders if something happened to him. She is very anxious and only hopes that he is okay. But when she carefully looks inside, she becomes completely horrified. The place is consumed by destruction and she cannot believe what she sees. Everything has been devastated. Suddenly, she notices a figure walking toward her, emerging from the rubble. In panic, she begins to scream and prepares to attack. Then she realizes it is just Shan. He calmly says that everything has already been resolved and that they should leave. Then he immediately turns and begins to walk away. Then he pulls out a gun, points it upward, and fires a single shot. The bullet explodes in the air. Lu is startled by the noise, but Shan begins to laugh because he knows exactly what he just did. Meanwhile, outside, Mukong sees the signal in the sky and understands immediately. He comments that Shan's jaw is truly impressive and seems genuinely surprised. Then he begins his part of the destruction plan. He throws several prepared incendiary bottles onto the ground, causing chaos and explosions everywhere. The entire area is quickly engulfed in flames. People begin to scream because of the fire and run desperately trying to put it out. Exactly as planned, everyone becomes completely distracted by the chaos. With fire spreading, Shan and Lu easily move to other areas. Lu points the way, explaining that the alley ahead will lead them to the surroundings of the south gate while continuing forward. Suddenly, another woman runs from behind and calls out to Shan, begging him to take her with them. It is Lu and King. Shan Zhao recognizes her immediately. She begs again, saying that they were once lovers, and asks him to take her because of their past relationship. She approaches and promises that if he gets her out of that place, she will not even blame him for having used her name to take loans in the past. Shan responds coldly, saying that she truly does not understand the situation. Upon hearing his tone, Luan King breaks down and starts to cry. She sobs, saying that the gang forces her to work every day serving old men, and explains that if she resists, they beat her. If she tries to escape, they capture her and drag her back. She cries, saying that she has nowhere to go and begs Shan to let her live with him, promising to do absolutely anything he wants. Shan stares, remembering everything she did. He asks if she ever thought about this day, when she laughed at him for being poor, called him a fool, slept with old men behind his back, and even led Han Feng to him, in an attempt to kill him. Seeing this, Luan King becomes truly terrified. At that moment, she finally realizes that everything she did is completely unforgivable. Shan thinks even deeper. He remembers his past life and wonders if when she dismembered him back then, she ever imagined that a day like this would come. She did far too many horrible things to him, and there is no way to forgive her, no matter what she says. Now he forces himself to keep his emotions under control, because he cannot allow history to repeat itself. Shan coldly pushes her aside and says that her acting is still as bad as ever. Then he turns to Lua and says that they must continue. Lua looks at Luan King, lying on the ground and in silence, hopes that she learns a lesson from this and never becomes someone like that again. At that moment, Luan King completely loses her mind. She screams that if Jay does not let her live, then she will not let anyone have peace either. Immediately, a system notification appears, detecting an intense negative emotion of hatred, plus 999. The number skyrockets completely. Shortly after they leave, the area boss arrives. The first thing he asks about is the water, shouting to know if his supply is safe, since it is the most valuable thing he possesses. When his men open the door and see the damage inside, their hearts sink. Absolutely nothing remains. Then they notice words written on the wall. It is clearly written that Chief Zan Yang's water has been taken, and that next time it will be his life. Zan Yang completely loses his sanity. He shouts furiously, demanding to know who did this. It is beyond rage. At that moment, Luan King speaks from the ground. She tells Chief Zan Yang that it was Shan Zhao. She lies, claiming that she tried to stop him, but Shan injured her and insulted Zan Yang, calling him trash. She clings to Zan Yang, deliberately manipulating him, saying that Shan claimed Zan Yang was not worthy of possessing such a resource. She continues adding fuel to the fire, warning that Shan plans to finish all of them. Hearing this, Zan Yangan's rage explodes calmly. He orders everyone to follow him to the south gate to massacre Shanhao. A massive emotion spreads throughout the entire camp when the order to hunt them is given. Shan and Mukong notice the movement immediately. Shan comments, clearly understanding that they are being chased, since the entire enemy force gathers behind the chief. Shan murmurs calmly that Chief Zan moved faster than he expected. Even so, he is already prepared. Zan points forward and shouts the order to capture him. Everyone behind him advances with their rage completely out of control, but that ends up giving Shan the advantage. He remains calm and casually throws a torch on the ground in front of them, instantly creating a massive wall of fire. The group is forced to stop, trapped behind the flames. The chief shouts through the fire that he will ensure Shan's end as soon as that is over. A notification appears detecting intense negative emotion of hatred, plus 999. Now, two people whose hatred for Shan has reached the maximum level. Shan, however, remains relaxed. He sarcastically thanks Chief Zanyan, noting that he will gladly accept those emotion points to grow stronger and gain even more in the future. Then another notification appears. Boom. Negative emotion points reach 3,000. New ability unlocked. Spatial barrier. Inside the cozy shelter, Shan is busy organizing a small celebration. Mukong laughs loudly, saying that what happened earlier was absolutely incredible. He bets that the old dog Zan Yang is probably destroying his own territory out of so much rage right now. They sit around the table enjoying a variety of absurdly delicious dishes. They feast without the slightest concern, completely ignoring the deadly heat wave raging outside. The food looks so incredible that just looking at it would already make anyone want to join. It is the kind of banquet you want to dive into immediately, but unfortunately unless you are there you can only imagine the taste. Seeing all this, she sincerely thanks Shan, saying that if he had not saved her she does not know how much longer she would have remained trapped in that hell. She is extremely grateful and feels ready to do anything to repay him. She even offers to take care of the kitchen, saying that she knows how to cook all kinds of food and that she just wants to make him happy. Since she knows that men usually love a good homemade meal, Jay smiles warmly and reminds her that they are former classmates, so there is no need for so much formality. He understands her gratitude, but above all wants her to relax, feel safe, and take things slowly. While she is there, Lu insists that she is not just being polite. She explains that he makes her feel that there are still people in this world worth trusting. Mukong then joins the conversation, adding that that whole hero saving the damsel scene was quite impressive too. He jokes and asks Shan to tell the details, wanting to know exactly how he managed to do that. He still cannot believe that Shan emptied an entire reservoir by himself, and wonders if he used some kind of crazy magic. For a brief moment the environment falls silent. Shan simply replies that he has his own methods. He tells Mukong that instead of worrying about how, he should focus on figuring out how to safely sell all that water. Hearing this, Mukong freezes for a second, realizing that Shan is right. Selling that amount of water without revealing where it came from will not be easy at all. Then casually asks Liu about her life after middle school, mentioning that he never heard any news about her after they graduated. Liu hesitates for a moment and then explains that her family went through serious problems right after graduation. She adds that her parents disappeared while she speaks. Bad memories overwhelm her, and she begins to feel the panic rising again. Even so, she faces the fear, knowing that Shan deserves to know the truth. But just as she speaks, flames begin to suddenly rise around the perimeter. They do not believe what they are seeing. Moken looks out the window and blurts out that the entire place is on fire. The fire is completely out of control. It is obvious that the people who lost the water supply either want to recover it or want to destroy everything. As the flames explode violently, Shan, Mukundeng and Lu stand looking outside in shock. The fire is gigantic. Amid the chaos, they can see people outside suffering from the heat. One of them holds a child, screaming desperately for help, begging someone to save the children. Mukund suddenly realizes what is happening. He says that Professor Lin must be behind this and wonders if that bastard is really trying to burn everyone alive. Luz asks anxiously if they should go out and do something. Shan, however, remains thoughtful. He realizes that Luz is trying to use morality and innocent lives as a trap to lure him out. He finds this useless, as he left behind long ago the naive good person from his past life, the one who was strangled to death just for trying to save everyone out there. Zan Yang shouts for Shan X to come out. He threatens that if Shan does not appear, he will burn the entire area to ashes, just to see how long Shan's so-called iron turtle shell will last. One of Zan Yang's subordinates quickly flatters him, saying that the boss is as wise as ever. He adds that if the fire continues to spread, even if the people inside do not burn to death, the smoke will certainly finish them off. Zan Yang enjoys the spectacle. As the fire grows bigger and bigger, his mood improves more and more. In his mind, he thinks that this is exactly what happens when someone dares to defy him. The flames keep rising, nearby buildings begin to collapse, and that feeds the shelter fire even more. Mukong begins to panic. He says that they cannot just stay inside. He warns that the heat will spread through the walls, and even if they do not burn, they will end up roasted alive or suffocated by the lack of oxygen. Shan just smiles calmly. He already has a plan. He thinks to himself that in a high-temperature apocalypse, he would never be stupid enough to fail to install a top-level fire protection system in his safe shelter. He prepared for exactly this scenario a long time ago. He even keeps random old PCs running defense software, using every piece of technology he has. Then, calmly he presses a red button on his console. Normally when someone presses a big red button, things are about to go very wrong, but this time it is the opposite. Outside, hidden devices are activated and immediately begin firing fire control grenades. They work like large fire extinguishers, releasing a massive suppressive smoke throughout the area. As the white smoke spreads, the flames quickly diminish. Mukong stands there in disbelief, completely stunned by the scene, and shouts, "Damn, this is gel-based in nanoscale." He cannot believe that Shan managed to get his hands on something like that. He says that this is pure military level and asks if Shan robbed an army base or something like that. Lu is also completely shocked, seeing the fire disappear before her eyes. As the fire is brought under control, the boss outside becomes more and more frustrated. He snorts and states that this is nothing but a desperate struggle before death. Even so, he acts as if he had prepared for this outcome. Suddenly, one of the nearby men tries to launch a sneak attack against Zangan, thinking the boss is distracted. The man strikes with all his strength, but it is useless. The boss is much stronger. He defeats the attacker easily and orders everyone to keep attacking. He says that he does not believe Shan's junk technology will last forever. He is willing to drag this out. The man beside him panics and stammers, telling the boss that the fuel is almost gone. He points out that the white mist coming from the house is too effective. At that moment, Shan's voice echoes from inside the shelter. He casually asks Chief Zhang Yangan if he has finished playing with fire, and jokes asking if he does not want to come in for a glass of cold water to cool off. Right after the provocation, a notification appears before Shan. Strong negative emotion detected. Anger plus 888. The people who were outside, seemingly enjoying the fire spectacle, are now completely disappointed. With the flames dying out, there is nothing left to watch. Inside his mind, the boss changes his approach. He decides that simply killing Shan would be letting him off too easily. He realizes that that house is fireproof, resistant, and completely self-sufficient. It is the perfect shelter. Now he wants it for himself. Brute force did not work. The fire attacks failed, so he decides that there is no longer any need to hold back. He thinks that since it has come to this point, no one should blame him for tearing away the last remnant of civility he has left. As he looks at the nearby innocent civilians, a look of pure fear spreads across their faces, and Shan understands exactly what is about to happen, but he is already prepared for any possibility. With fire burning nearby, Chief Zan Yangan shouts for Shan to come out immediately and look at all the people suffering. Because of this, an elderly woman begins to cry and shout at Shan, calling him a damned brat. She blames him for offending Shan Yang and dragging everyone into ruin along with him, demanding that he come out. Meanwhile, another man shouts that Zan Yangan is a bastard, declaring that if it comes to this, they will run out and fight him to the death. Shan thinks to himself that using other people's lives to threaten him is the oldest trick there is. Unfortunately, in this world, having a soft heart is the same as committing suicide. Zan Yangan mocks, saying that if Shan wants to hide like a coward, that's fine. He will start with this old man. Then he grabs the elderly man who is trembling and crying in fear. Suddenly, a voice shouts that Professor Lin Feng will have a horrible death for doing this. Upon hearing that voice and seeing what is happening, Shan immediately recognizes the man as Grandpa Wang. He remembers how this old man once gave him water and told him to survive, saying that as long as he lived there would always be hope. That memory finally awakens true anger in Shan. He turns and tells Mukong to stay inside and protect himself. Then he states that he will settle the score with Chief Zan Yangang. The others look at him in shock, but they also understand. As Shan walks outside, he steps into the sea of flames. He calmly tells Zan Yangang that their grudges are strictly between the two of them and have nothing to do with anyone else. Zan Yangang still holds the old man by the collar with a burning torch in his hand, while listening to Shan's words. He throws the old man aside and mocks Shan, saying that he finally decided to come out of his shell. He asks if Shan wants to play the hero, then lays out his conditions to return the money, hand over the water, and give up his own life. Only then might he consider sparing the others. Shan responds coldly that he has no interest in playing the hero. The two stare at each other intensely. Then Shan raises his hand and points forward. He says that fighting and killing are boring things, and only harm one's own karma. He adds that he heard that Zan Yang started by running a casino, so why not settle this in the way Zan Yang knows best? He proposes a bet. If Zan Yang wins, everything Shan owns will belong to him. If Shan wins, Zan Yang must release Grandpa Wang and leave this area. Chief Zan Yang bursts into laughter and agrees immediately. He throws a set of dice and says they will bet on who gets the highest number, a single round to decide life or death. Shan quickly takes them and calmly says that he bets high. He adds that a confrontation worthy of the god of gamblers is about to begin. The two adjust their stances for a moment. It feels like they are in a casino and not on a battlefield in flames. They shout loudly as they begin to shake the dice. The device is activated and the dice inside begin spinning frantically. And as the dice roll, everyone around begins to cheer for the chief, shouting that Chief Zan Yang will definitely win. Chief Zan Yang appears extremely confident. When the dice stop, he bursts into laughter. He proudly announces 36, a supreme roll, and declares that Shan has lost. Shan seems to remain truly calm and tells him not to rush, stating that the winner has not yet been decided. Then he secretly uses a trick to manipulate the dice. He slices the dice with precision and casually comments that Chief Zan Yang's dice do not seem to be of good quality. Everyone panics upon seeing the dice split in half. Someone shouts that the total is 21, which surpasses the supposed supreme roll. Shan declares that Chief Shan has lost and orders him to release the old man. Chief Zan Yangang becomes furious. He accuses Shan of cheating and immediately rushes at him. A notification appears, strong negative emotion detected, anger and extraction 500. Chief Shan charges with a knife, cursing Shan and shouting for him to die. The people around panic and scatter. Shan, however, remains serene. He thinks that this is the perfect moment to test his new ability. When Chief Shan lunges at him, Shan dodges easily and then throws the dice device at high speed, startling Chief Shan. The object hits the ground, raising smoke and debris. Everyone runs in panic, asking if the chief is okay. As the smoke spreads, Chief Zan Yangang coughs and says that he is fine. He orders two people to go look for Shan. When the smoke dissipates, Chief Zan Yangang spots Shan ahead. He points at him and orders everyone to take him down. The henchmen open fire immediately, shooting wildly, shouting with excitement, eager to kill Shan. Chief Zan Yangang demands a report, but before anyone responds, a swift strike appears and knocks down a henchman who was right in front of him. Chief Zanyanggang is shocked when the smoke finally clears. Shan is revealed, standing there completely unharmed. Chief Zanyanggang pulls out a massive rocket launcher, shouting that no matter how strong Shan is, there is no way to dodge this, and tells Shan to run, firing the rocket. At the very instant the projectile is launched, the chief shouts that everything Shan owns will be his. At that moment, a notification appears. Spatial barrier activated. The barrier instantly surrounds Shan's body, protecting him. The barrier absorbs the entire impact of the explosion and completely blocks the attack. Chief Zanyanggang begins to panic. Sweat runs down his face as he wonders what is happening. He cannot believe that Shan blocked a missile. He begins to feel that this guy is simply unbeatable. Shan smirks and tells Chief Zanyanggang that losing in front of so many people must be difficult. He asks if Zanyanggang intends to go back on the bet. As he speaks, Shan casually slices the missile into several pieces with a few strikes. Then he begins to walk forward slowly. Seeing Shan approaching, the chief feels true fear for the first time. Shan comments that Zanyanggang does not even have a decent knife and is not worthy of negotiating terms. Chief Zanyanggang thinks that there is definitely something wrong with this guy, something very suspicious. Shan says that Chief Zanyanggang keeps looking for trouble and crossing limits, so the time has finally come to settle the score. But internally, Chief Zanyanggang thinks quickly. He realizes that the fuel has run out and that fighting head-on is a lost battle. This boy has strange abilities, and his shelter is a gold mine. He decides that it would be better to recruit Shan and recover his losses with interest. Even while planning this, he forces a smile onto his face, with shining eyes and a falsely friendly expression. He claims that everything was just a misunderstanding. He suggests that they are just friends who started off on the wrong foot, and asks Shan if he wants to make a deal. Chief Zanyanggang asks Shan Zhou to listen carefully to what he has to say. He warns that killing him would only leave blood on Shan's hands without bringing him any benefit. He adds that although human life is cheap in this world, he can truly help Shan survive and live better. He mentions that he has a batch of antibiotic medicines such as penicillin and also some cephalosporin. And he asks Shan if he understands how precious these supplies are now. He explains that even a small infected wound can take a life. He offers a deal. If Shan lets him go, he will share this batch of medicine with him. Shan listens attentively and admits that in times like these, antibiotics are indeed a valuable currency. He honestly tells Chief Zanyang that he has more than just this shelter and that his stock is much larger than Zanyang could ever imagine. Upon hearing this, Chief Zanyang is shocked. He immediately points out that Shan only has food and water, but without medicine, a single illness could be fatal. He suggests that they cooperate, revealing that the medicines are stored in an abandoned factory in the Western District and that only he knows the password. Shan stares coldly for a moment before agreeing, saying that tonight's conflict ends there. He even places his arm over the chief's shoulder in an apparently friendly gesture. Chief Zanyang quickly agrees, saying yes, absolutely it ends there, and that he is happy the misunderstanding has been resolved. Shan tells him to leave for now, and that they can discuss the details another day. Chief Zanyang begins to walk away while his subordinates look confused and stare at him, asking what happened. Chief Zanyang simply orders them to move and they all leave together. Shan keeps a watchful gaze as they retreat. When they are far enough, he murmurs quietly that a simple password cannot stop him. Even without it, he can open that door. He then turns to the neighbors who are still there, especially Grandpa Wang, and reassures him, saying that he is safe now. While Shan speaks with Grandpa Wang, the ant can barely control herself. She panics, frustrated and consumed by terror. Her state clearly shows fear. Grandpa Wang quickly thanks Shan. He says that Shan saved his life and that if he ever needs anything in the future, he just has to ask. He admits that he is too old to fight, but that he can still help plant, cultivate, or do tasks. Shan gently tells Grandpa that he understands his intentions, but asks him to go home, lock the door, and rest. As the moon remains high and the heat continues to rise even at night, everyone finally returns to their homes, walking back. One of the bandits' henchmen, the one Shan frightened nearly to death earlier, walking ahead of him, Chief Zanyanggang mocks, saying that Shan Zhou is just a reckless boy. He laughs at the idea of actually sharing the medicine, admitting that all that talk about cooperation was just a tactic to buy time. He explains that he only wanted to stabilize the situation first. Once he figures out how to obtain Shan's supplies, he will deal with him properly. He adds that if Shan thinks he can face him, he is still too green. Hearing this, the subordinates immediately begin to flatter him. One of them praises the chief for being wise. Another agrees, adding that since Shan dared to confront Chief Lu, he probably will not live more than 3 days. Chief Lu's expression turns serious. He observes that there is definitely something wrong with Shan. Not even artillery projectiles could reach him, which makes no sense. He orders Pineapple Head to spend the next few days investigating Shan carefully, but before he can say anything else, a sudden strike severs his head. The subordinates become extremely terrified. One shouts to run while another screams, asking if it is a ghost, unable to believe that this just happened. They panic and scatter, leaving Chief Lu's body alone on the ground near a building. A figure stands silently with one hand extended. It is Shan Sha. He calmly bids Chief Yang farewell for the last time. Later that night, a loud announcement echoes across the area. It declares a state of emergency. The global extreme heat phenomenon has completely spiraled out of control. Multiple climate infection points have been exceeded, and the ecosystem is on the verge of collapse. Authorities formally urge residents to make a choice based on their circumstances. One option is to migrate north to temporary government shelters. The other is to remain where they are and wait for rescue. The announcement repeats that this is not a drill. Shansha listens carefully and analyzes the situation. He knows that heading north to this so-called Pure Land will soon turn into another purgatory, while waiting for rescue is an even bigger fantasy. Deep down, he knows the real nightmare is only beginning. Thinking about the monsters, he considers what the future holds. He knows that heat-resistant mutant beasts will soon begin devouring everything civilization has built. He also knows that awakened humans will emerge, form factions, fight over resources, and turn against one another. He realizes that his goal is no longer just to protect the safe house. He wants to turn it into the ultimate fortress for surviving the apocalypse. Outside, people are already starving. Someone screams that they are starving, that their house burned down, and demands to know why Shansha gets to live comfortably. Meanwhile, Shansha is relaxing inside his enormous fortress, living alone while enjoying food, drinks, and air conditioning. Naturally, nothing makes people happier during an apocalypse than watching someone else enjoy air conditioning. Anger spreads through the crowd. A man starts pounding on the door, shouting for Shansha to come outside. He blames Shansha for refusing to help them before, claiming that everyone ended up in this situation because of him. He demands an explanation. More people join in, insisting that Shansha share the safe house. They claim everyone should take turns living there for the sake of collective survival, all while wearing mocking smiles. Inside, Shansha doesn't react in the slightest. He listens to relaxing music while calmly doing his chores, completely at ease. He even takes a picture of his delicious meal and posts it online, then casually scrolls through the comments to see everyone's reactions. Status notifications start appearing. Envy plus 150, anger plus 130, despair plus 95. Shansha looks through the comments and thinks that incompetent rage is the cheapest emotion of the apocalypse. Outside, the crowd can do nothing but shout, curse, and throw things around to vent their frustration. Some of them even smash their own phones. One man hurls his device aside and curses, saying that since Shansha refused to do things the easy way, he will have to do things the hard way, swearing that he will bring Shansha down. Meanwhile, Shansha thinks about the abandoned factory in the Western District and decides to scout the route. However, the moment he steps outside, the crowd starts throwing objects at him, and amid the flying debris, a machete suddenly comes straight toward him. Even with the tension rising around him, Shansha remains completely calm. The sweat running down his face has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the suffocating heat outside. Suddenly, another knife is thrown directly at him. With the slightest movement, he simply dodges it, allowing the blade to bury itself in the door behind him without even changing his expression. Soon after, the people responsible reveal themselves. 3 thugs, led by a bald man, step forward and make their threat perfectly clear. If Shansha refuses to hand over the safe house, they will cripple him. Shansha isn't intimidated in the slightest. Instead, he walks toward the bald man and stares him directly in the eyes, as if the whole situation is nothing more than a joke. The thug tries to attack him. Before he can even react properly, Shansha grabs his arm with ease. The difference in strength is ridiculous. With a simple twist, he breaks the man's arm. A cry of pain fills the air as the bald man's confidence instantly turns into panic. Without giving him time to recover, Shansha sends him flying as if he weighs nothing. When the knife falls, Shansha casually catches it in midair, already prepared to continue the fight. Another thug, a blonde man, tries to take advantage of the distraction and attack him from behind, but he makes a fatal mistake. Shansha's eyes glow red, and his patience disappears instantly. He moves with incredible speed. He takes down all 3 thugs with quick, precise strikes. The fight ends almost as quickly as it began. Shansha remains standing while his attackers lie scattered around him. He doesn't even have a scratch. One of the men lies on the ground, trembling in fear. He can't believe Shansha actually dared to act like this in broad daylight. The system records everything, confirming a peak of 1,000 fear points as the man trembles on the ground. Desperate, he asks whether Shansha intends to kill him. Shansha looks at the 3 men with contempt and says that killing them outright would only dirty his hands. He has something much worse planned. As he walks away, he calmly explains what their fate will be. With the intense heat, their injuries will inevitably become infected. Sepsis will take over their bodies within a few days, leading to a slow and painful death. After dealing with the problem, Shansha heads toward his next destination, an abandoned industrial zone. He reaches a factory in the Western District, but as he approaches the entrance, he notices a security camera that is still working. He can't risk being recorded, and he can't leave behind any kind of witness, not even an electronic one. With a swift flick of his hand, Shansha launches an invisible blade of energy. The blade cuts through the air and instantly destroys the camera. Now, no one is watching. Using his power again, he slices through the door's lock and breaks into the building. The heavy door swings open, revealing the dark interior of the warehouse. However, the moment he steps inside, he notices a strange smell. The chemical odor is so strong that it burns his nose and throat. Something is wrong. He suddenly starts coughing violently, realizing the danger far too late. Poison gas is a trap. His strength quickly drains away, his knees buckle, and he collapses onto the floor. His vision becomes blurry, but he can still make out two figures emerging from the warehouse's shadows. Eventually, he loses all his strength and blacks out completely. One of the figures, wearing a gas mask, kneels beside him and injects something into his arm. Suddenly, Shensha's eyes snap open. Whatever they injected into him is working. Even so, he can't understand why they would bother helping him. The masked man asks whether he is feeling better and explains that the nerve gas used here isn't lethal, just extremely unpleasant. Now recovered, Shensha gets to his feet and demands to know who they are. He suspects Lil Heng may have betrayed him, but these people clearly don't look like ordinary criminals. A woman's voice then introduces the masked man as Lin Feng, a biomedical researcher. Shansha notices several syringes prepared nearby. The man removes his mask, revealing a middle-aged intellectual. He confirms that he is the person in charge of the facility, and explains that his field of study focuses on human evolution in external environments. He then introduces his student Sarui, a pink-haired woman carrying a briefcase who politely greets Shanxia. Her delicate appearance is completely out of place in the middle of an apocalypse. Professor Lin brushes off the use of the gas, saying it was simply a security measure against intruders. However, his genuine curiosity becomes obvious when he mentions the special tool Shanxia used to cut through the door. Shanxia thanks them for saving his life, but he remains on high alert. Having a biomedical researcher involved makes this whole situation far more complicated than he expected. Professor Lin shows him the inside of the factory, where massive refrigerators are packed with medicine and supplies. Taking a closer look, Shenxia realizes this place is far more than an ordinary pharmaceutical warehouse. In the middle of the hall stands a complete T-Rex skeleton on display. Yeah, this definitely isn't your average pharmacy. He begins to question whether this place is really just a storage facility for medicine. The scale of the operation and the bizarre decoration raise plenty of suspicions. Professor Lin Feng then leads him to the refrigerators and politely tells him to take as much medicine as he wants. He offers it as an apology for the security measures and as a welcome gift. Shenxia doesn't trust him. His eyes remain filled with suspicion. Still, he's not about to turn down an offer this valuable. While the professor and Sui watch, Shenxia opens his backpack and starts stuffing it with various medicines, including antibiotics, painkillers, anti-inflammatory drugs, and anything else that might prove useful in this new world. Once he's finished, he closes the backpack, thanks the professor in a cold and distant tone, and prepares to leave. Shanxia walks toward the door, leaving the mysterious professor behind. However, before he can fully leave, Ningastora gives him a strange smile and says that they will meet again. Clearly, this isn't over. By the time Shanxia returns to his building, the sun is already setting and the sky is painted with golden hues. Like a brief moment of peace before the next storm, Shisal reaches the door of his shelter, the only safe place left in this hell. After entering, he leans against the door and lets out a sigh of relief. Even though Professor Lin saved his life and never directly harmed him, something about the man deeply bothers Shenxia. The way he watched him, that smile, and his calculating gaze remain stuck in Shenxia's mind. At that moment, his phone vibrates. A message appears in the residents' group chat. Someone is desperately asking for antibiotics and medicine to stop bleeding, promising to pay a high price. It's the same group of thugs who attacked him. Shenxia responds with a malicious grin. He tells the group that he just got several boxes of medicine and that the effectiveness should be excellent. Then he adds that they aren't for sale. His response immediately sends the thugs and their allies into a rage. They insult him, call him a selfish villain, and swear revenge. They promise that the moment they recover, they'll come after him. The system registers an explosion of anger, hatred, and envy coming from the others. Completely ignoring their threats, Shanxia sits down and begins sorting through the medicine he brought back from the factory. Meanwhile, something inside his backpack catches his attention. His eyes narrow. His instincts tell him something is wrong. He examines the contents more carefully and finds a small, strange object hidden among the medicine boxes that definitely wasn't there before. There's no doubt about it, it's a tracker. Professor Lin was never trying to be kind. He was simply watching his prey while examining his belongings. Shanxia quickly realizes what happened and starts thinking about who planted the device in his backpack and when they managed to do it. But instead of feeling afraid, a twisted idea comes to mind. If someone wants to play the tracking game, he's more than willing to play along. With a confident smile, Shanxia decides to accept the game offered by his mysterious pursuer. He plans to turn the situation against them. And right at that moment, as if fate had handed him the perfect opportunity, a stray white cat appears in a nearby alley. Shanxia quickly spots an opportunity, quietly approaches the white cat, and asks the animal for a small favor. As he fastens the tracker onto the cat's back, he explains that all it has to do is keep wandering around the places it normally visits. Confused, the cat simply meows, completely unaware that it has just become part of an important plan. With the device attached, the animal casually walks away, setting Shanxia's scheme to throw off anyone tracking him into motion. Elsewhere, inside an office, the tracker's signal appears on a laptop. On the city map, a chaotic web of red lines starts forming as the device moves around in an erratic pattern. The man monitoring the screen follows every change with intense focus. Professor Lin Feng furrows his brow, puzzled by the target's completely unpredictable movements. Meanwhile, Shanxia turns his attention back to the apartment residents' group chat. A man named Wenwei sends a desperate message asking for medicine for his dying brother. Shortly afterward, a woman appears begging for water for her son, claiming she's willing to trade anything for even a little water. Shansha watches everything with a cold expression. He immediately recognizes the trick. He had already seen this kind of manipulation in his previous life. The woman isn't being sincere, she's simply trying to take advantage of the situation. Not long after, someone in the group starts attacking him directly, accusing him of being selfish and heartless for keeping supplies to himself. Shansha isn't bothered in the slightest. As far as he's concerned, it's ridiculous that they're trying to make him feel guilty. Sitting comfortably on the couch, he simply watches the drama unfold on his phone. The accusations, desperation, and chaos outside mean absolutely nothing to him. Hypocrisy and emotional blackmail simply don't work on someone like him. Instead of arguing, Shansha prepares his next move. After analyzing everything, he finally sends a response in the chat. But rather than defend himself, he decides to expose Wei. He tells everyone to show them the 3 cases of water and 2 cases of canned food that he has hidden inside his apartment. The woman who had been begging for water moments earlier immediately turns pale when she reads the message. Panic spreads across her face as she realizes this means Shansha has cameras in the hallway. Despite being careful not to get caught, she had been recorded after all. Her entire plan falls apart on the spot. The revelation triggers an explosion of outrage in the chat. The neighbors redirect all their anger toward Wei and begin demanding that he share the supplies he had been hiding. Their outrage escalates quickly, and it doesn't take long before it turns into action. Soon a group of burly men armed with bats and hammers gathers outside Wei's apartment door. They're ready to take by force what they now consider to be their rightful share. The tension erupts when a brutal strike slams into the door, splintering the wood with terrifying force. Inside the apartment, Wei and his wife watch in sheer terror. Through the broken peephole, they can see the furious crowd preparing to storm inside. One of the neighbors, his face twisted with rage, screams at them to hand over all the food and water they've been hiding. His threat echoes through the hallway, warning them not to force the crowd to use violence. Whatever fragile layer of civilization remained disappears completely at that moment. The door finally gives way, and the mob storms into the apartment. Amid the chaos, a woman is cornered against the wall, fear covering her face as the looters shove her aside. What follows is an all-out looting spree. The neighbors, now reduced to a savage mob, swarm the supply boxes and grab everything they can carry. And in the ultimate display of hypocrisy, even the woman who had been begging for water for her son joins the raid, stuffing her backpack with Onwei's stolen supplies. When it's finally over, the apartment has been completely emptied. Onwei's wife remains collapsed on the floor, her body covered in bruises. Her eyes are empty as silent tears run down her battered face. Everything is gone. The tragedy becomes even worse on the stairs. Onwei's brother, the very person he had been begging for medicine, has died. With his heart shattered, one can only murmur for him to rest in peace. Fear grips the residents once again. Now they face a new concern. The body could begin to decompose and trigger an epidemic. In the middle of the panic, Onwei screams, asking whether anyone actually cares whether they live or die. That's when a calm figure appears walking down the stairs. Professor Lingle Dong steps in front of the crowd and asks everyone to remain calm. Accompanied by his assistant, he formally approaches the residents. He tells them they are part of the city's CDC medical team and have come to provide assistance. Putting on a pair of white gloves, he apologizes for arriving so late and explains that blocked roads caused the delay. Lin approaches the body and carefully begins examining it. Then, with a serious expression, he warns that corpses exposed to extreme temperatures must be handled immediately by professionals. Kneeling beside the deceased, he explains that if they don't act quickly, a dangerous epidemic could spread throughout the entire building. Following his instructions, his team begins handing out disinfectants and several medications. The residents, overwhelmed and on the verge of tears, begin thanking him and calling him their savior. A wave of relief and hope spreads through the crowd. Many of them believe the government has finally come to their rescue. Lin silently watches everything, seeing his performance work perfectly. However, that generosity is nothing more than an act. In his mind, he's focused on something far more important. The tracker's signal became chaotic precisely inside this building. With absolute certainty, he concludes that his target, Shanxia, must be somewhere nearby. But he's not the only one who has noticed. Several floors above, Shanxia watches everything through the window of his apartment, while the neighbors celebrate the arrival of a savior. Shanxia sees Professor Lin for what he truly is, the same demon who hunted him in his previous life. The recognition is immediate and deeply unsettling. Shanxia watches the professor among the crowd, trying to understand why that particular enemy has appeared here among so many people. Then the answer strikes him like lightning: the tracker. With Lin's presence suddenly making perfect sense, Shanxia's suspicions are confirmed. Is he really tracking me? Shanxia thinks, clenching his jaw. At that moment, something vibrates in his pocket, interrupting his thoughts. It's his phone. He pulls it out and sees a message from an unknown number. The warning is short but chilling. Be careful with that doctor. Shanxia freezes for a moment. Does someone else know who I really am? But who? Who sent that message? Still standing by the window, he watches the crowd below while gripping his phone. His tense face and red eyes are reflected in the device's dark screen. His mind races as he tries to make sense of this unexpected new piece on the board. The scene then shifts to a distant rooftop. There, the lens of a powerful telescope is aimed directly at Shanxia's building. Behind the equipment stands a figure dressed entirely in black. The mysterious observer has been following every move. He was the one who sent the warning. A new player has entered this deadly game. Back in the apartment, Shanxia lowers his head slightly. The brim of his cap casts a shadow over his face as he thinks about the message. His eyes narrow with an unsettling realization. The situation is far more complicated than he imagined. He's not just dealing with Lin. The question now circling his mind is simple, yet disturbing. Is someone else watching me too? Shanxia tries calling back the unknown number that sent the warning. However, all he gets is an automated response. The number is virtual and impossible to trace. Leaning against the window, he considers the situation. Whoever sent the message is clearly hiding their identity, which only makes everything more suspicious. As he thinks, several possibilities run through his mind. It could have been a genuine warning from someone who knows the danger Professor Lin represents, but it could just as easily be a trap designed to push him into confronting the professor on someone else's behalf. Outside, the residents continue thanking Lin for taking care of the bodies and preventing the risk of a disease spreading. From the balcony, Shanxia silently watches the scene. He doesn't trust anyone, absolutely no one. Down below, Professor Lin smiles kindly while presenting himself as someone who only wants to help. He says he's simply doing his duty and asks them to come to him if anyone starts feeling sick. It's all an act. Shanxia's expression turns cold. He knows something far darker is hiding behind that appearance of kindness. Suddenly, a small detail catches his attention. There's a stain on the professor's clothes. At first glance, it looks like blood, but on closer inspection, it could also be some kind of dried chemical reagent. That uncertainty only makes Shanxia more alert. The tiny stain awakens a disturbing memory from his previous life. Back then, medical teams would appear claiming they had come to prevent epidemics. Not long afterward, however, the strongest and healthiest people in the area would simply disappear without a trace. The calculated smile on Lin's face confirms his suspicion. For Shanxia, there is no doubt. He's looking at the same kind of monster in a lab coat he encountered in his previous life. Sometime later, Professor Lin posts an announcement on the community bulletin board. His plan begins to unfold. The residents read the message with gratitude. He offers free medical examinations, treatment for injuries, and even water for anyone who needs it. Everything will take place in the building's underground parking garage. To the residents, it's a blessing. To Shanxia, it's obviously a trap. Meanwhile, in an isolated alley, a white cat approaches a can of food that Zhenjiao strategically left there. The animal begins eating peacefully. A short while later, Professor Lin appears. He had followed the signal from his tracker and now realizes what happened. The signal wasn't coming from a person, it was coming from the cat. Instead of getting angry, Lin actually seems amused by the trick. He crouches down and calmly pets the animal with an unsettling sense of composure. At that moment, something vibrates in his pocket. The alert completely changes his expression. The hunter realizes he may have become the prey. Back at his shelter, Shanxia watches the situation as the system records the professor's surprise and frustration. Lin quickly starts looking around, trying to figure out who might be watching him, but Shanxia remains perfectly concealed in his distant hiding spot. Shanxia smiles in satisfaction. His suspicions have been confirmed. The man standing before him is exactly the same demon he remembers from his previous life. As Lin's plan moves forward, the residents begin heading down to the underground parking garage. They make their way there searching for help and some relief from the suffocating heat. Without realizing it, they're walking straight into a trap. In the parking garage, people fan themselves and complain about the heat while waiting for their turn. None of them realize they've willingly walked straight into the lion's den. Professor Lin and his assistant begin conducting what appear to be medical examinations. Maintaining a professional appearance, they ask one of the residents some simple questions, including his name, age, and whether he's experienced any physical discomfort recently. An elderly man named Shanxia says he's 76 years old and suffers from high depression, fitting the profile of someone vulnerable perfectly. Mixed in with the crowd, Shanxia watches everything while hiding beneath a hood. He follows every detail, waiting for the moment when the professor's true intentions finally reveal themselves. A suspicious woman questions why they need to collect blood for something supposedly related to the heat. Lin calmly replies that it's only a routine examination, but the test tube labeled GHT-017 tells a different story. He's collecting samples for his own experiments. Shanxia's attention sharpens even further. This is clearly much more than a simple medical test. He begins wondering what Lin's real objective is. Suddenly, a man calls out to the professor in desperation. As the scene widens, it's clear that Lin has already collected dozens of blood samples. At that moment, a group of thugs storms into the area. Their leader, Zan Yang, begs the professor to save a companion named Shu, who is severely injured and showing signs of infection. Lin picks up a small vial. The label reads Prototype T7. He has found the perfect test subject, and he holds the vial up for Zan Yang to see. Lin describes its contents as a new broad-spectrum stimulant capable of accelerating healing and fighting infections. The entire story is carefully fabricated. Without showing the slightest emotion, he injects the blue liquid directly into Shu's arm. He then tells him to rest for a few days and assures him that he'll be fine soon. Deep down, Lin knows exactly what is about to happen. Completely unaware of the truth, Shu thanks the professor for helping him. For a few seconds, everything remains silent, and then something changes. Shu's eyes suddenly widen in an unnatural way. Cold sweat begins running down his forehead. The stimulant is taking effect. Both Shansha and Professor Lin watch the scene with complete attention. Shensel wonders exactly what the professor is expecting to see from this experiment. As the thugs begin leaving the parking garage, Zanyang calls back from a distance to ask whether Shu is feeling alright. Shansha remains where he is, silently observing. Suddenly, Shu stops trembling. He says it feels like his bones are burning and that an unbearable pain is tearing through his body from the inside. A muffled scream escapes his throat. His veins begin swelling and turning black. His fingers slowly twist and deform. The transformation has begun. His eyes turn blood red. All traces of humanity disappear from his face, replaced by pure rage and monstrous strength. When the mutation finishes, a powerful roar echoes through the parking garage. The shockwave sends nearby people stumbling backward. Lan watches in horror. He can't believe what he's seeing. He asks what's happening to his companion, but the man he knew is already gone. In an instant, the transformed creature lunges forward and grabs Zanyang by the neck. Desperate, Zanyang tries to bring him back to his senses, reminding him that he is his boss, but all reason has vanished. The serum didn't just give the monster strength, it also unleashed all the resentment he had been holding inside. Shuko stares at Zhang's face and remembers how he used to be treated as a human shield in the past. With brutal force, he hurls his former boss through the air like a rag doll. But his rage isn't over yet. The creature senses another presence hiding in the shadows and growls as it searches for a new target. At that moment, Shansha steps out of hiding. The monster immediately recognizes him and charges forward without any control, ready to destroy everything in its path. Shansha remains completely calm. With nothing more than a slight movement of his head, he dodges the wild attack. As he evades the strike, he coldly analyzes his opponent. The creature's strength has increased by at least 3 times, but its movements are slow and predictable. It's nothing but brute force with zero technique. That confirms Shansha's suspicion. This isn't an ordinary drug, it's an artificially induced mutation. Lin's experiment was both a success and a failure. Moving swiftly, Shansha uses his shadow manipulation ability to bring the creature down. The monster crashes violently onto the ground. Shansha's eyes glow an intense red. He's seen enough, and now it's time to end this. With a simple movement of his hand, a shadow blade slices through the air toward the mutant's neck. His expression remains completely emotionless. To him, this is simply a hunter eliminating a dangerous prey, nothing more. The monster remains motionless for a moment. A thin line appears across its neck. The strike was so fast that it was almost impossible to see. A moment later, the creature's lifeless body collapses onto the ground. Shansha stands silently over the corpse. The fight is over. Silence returns to the alley. In the distance, only the sound of crows breaks the stillness. On the horizon, the sun slowly disappears, bathing everything in a deep red glow. The alley remains quiet for only a few moments before the silence is broken by firm, measured footsteps. Someone calmly approaches the scene. Elsewhere, the thugs' superiors check their equipment and realize that the location signal from the nano-tracker they had injected into one of their men has suddenly disappeared. A short while later, Professor Lin Feng enters the alley. His immaculate shoes stop just inches away from the blood scattered across the ground. For the first time, his calm, controlled expression changes. This isn't the result he expected to find. Lying before him is Shu's lifeless body, the failed experiment. A few yards away, Zanyang lies severely injured and unconscious, and Rin wastes no time. He pulls out his tablet and begins scanning Shu's corpse, analyzing the mutation data. The results appear almost immediately. Prototype T7 caused extreme overstimulation that ultimately led to a nervous system collapse. However, that wasn't what killed him. When Lin examines the neck, he discovers the real cause, a clean cut. Far too precise to have been caused during an ordinary fight. The mark looks strangely familiar. His mind immediately recalls another corpse he examined before, Lil H. Feng. He had also died from a similar cut. Lin begins connecting the pieces. The fatal end of El Heng, the cuts on the door lock he had seen before, and Shu's death. They all show the exact same pattern, smooth, clean, and flawless cuts. Pulling something like that off without the proper tools would be practically impossible for an ordinary person. His interest grows even stronger. An image of Shansha comes to mind. From the very first time he saw him, Lin had already sensed that there was something unusual about him. His instincts were right. A dark smile slowly spreads across his face. Maybe he really has what I'm looking for. To Lin, Shansha has just become an extremely valuable specimen. At that moment, Zanyang starts coughing violently and regains consciousness. Lin immediately puts his gentle doctor persona back on, approaches him, and tells him not to move, warning that he could have a pulmonary hemorrhage. He then asks what happened, pretending to be genuinely concerned. Still confused, Zanyang simply asks about his friend Shu, completely unaware of the massacre that just took place. Lin watches him while displaying a photo of Shansha on his tablet with a sorrowful expression. The professor lies, claiming that what happened to Shu was probably connected to him. He continues manipulating the situation, insisting that only by finding Shansha can they uncover the truth and prevent anyone else from getting hurt. Consumed by rage and a desire for revenge, Zanyang falls straight into the trap. He claims that he knows Shansha and can take Lin to his home. Inside, Lin smiles with satisfaction. He tells Zan Yang not to worry and promises to take care of everything, assuring him that he'll receive treatment at his laboratory. Another test subject has just fallen into his hands. Completely fooled, Zan Yang repeatedly thanks him, convinced that the professor is genuinely going to help. He has no idea that he's being taken straight to his own grave. Lin's laboratory is cold, metallic, and completely sterile. It's a place where ethics and humanity simply don't exist. Pushed down the hallway in a wheelchair, Zan Yang is still confused. He asked the professor how Shu managed to transform like that when he had seemed perfectly fine right after the injection. The memory of that moment still haunts him. With his face hidden in the shadows, Lin lies without hesitation, claiming it was an extremely rare and severe rejection reaction, and assuring him that they need to make sure something similar never happens again. He says they need to perform a complete examination. They stop in front of a reinforced metal door. Hearing the explanation about the rejection, Zan Yang feels a chill run through his body. Panic begins to take hold. Now he realizes something is wrong. Desperate, he begs to go home, saying that all he needs is a few antibiotics. But it's already too late. His pleas mean nothing. Lian swipes his access card, and the heavy door slowly opens, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. Lin's kind facade disappears completely. In a cold, authoritative voice, he orders Zan Yang to stay quiet, saying that this is all for the sake of science, and for his own good as well. The thug tries to resist. A final desperate scream escapes his throat as he begs them not to do this, but no one listens. His eyes widen with pure terror as he's pushed into the dark room. A piercing scream echoes through the hallway. Moments later, the isolation room door closes, completely muffling the sound, and another test subject has been secured. Meanwhile, in the comfort of his shelter, Shansha sits peacefully on the couch. He has no idea that the hunter has already discovered where he is. His mind remains occupied with figuring out Professor Lin's true objectives and the reason behind all his actions. Suddenly, an unexpected sound breaks his concentration. A light flashes on the shelter's security console. Someone is trying to communicate. Shansha immediately realizes what has happened. Someone has breached his system. Professor Lin's smiling face appears on the screen. He calmly asks if this is Chen and whether the two of them can have a conversation. The enemy has just knocked on his door. Later that night, an unexpected figure appears outside Shansha's home. It's Professor Lin himself. With a calm smile, he confirms that he's found the right place before stepping inside. For a moment, he looks up at the sky, commenting to himself about the intense heat and how the clouds are completely hiding the stars. The door to the house opens. Only darkness awaits on the other side. Shansha is waiting. He soon appears with his arms crossed and directly asks what brings Professor Lin to his home so late at night. Once inside, Lin casually explains that he heard Shansha lived there and decided to pay him a visit. The tension between the two is obvious. Shansha shows no surprise. Deep down, he always knew this meeting would happen eventually. Still, he admits to himself that it happened much sooner than expected, especially since the professor came to him personally. He decides to face the situation head-on. With a slight smile, Lin remarks that he didn't expect to see him again so soon, making it clear that this visit was no coincidence. After sitting down, the professor immediately begins examining his surroundings. He comments that Shansha's home is quite unusual before explaining what he's noticed. Double-layered glass and an independent water circulation system. To him, this isn't an ordinary home. It's a shelter built for the apocalypse. With a piercing stare, Lin finally asks the question he's truly interested in. Did Shansha already know this extreme heat wave was coming? Shansha simply smiles. He avoids giving a direct answer and comes up with an absurd excuse. He claims he bought a discounted renovation package and that the contractor guaranteed the structure would last for 50 years. He jokes that he never imagined the whole thing would make him look like some kind of prophet. Lin doesn't find the joke amusing. His expression turns serious. He says the real reason for his visit is to ask about something specific. Without wasting time, he brings up the death of neighbor Shui and the incident involving King Feng, who had previously caused trouble for Shansha. Lin explains that he examined the bodies and discovered that their cervical vertebrae had been severed with surgical precision. According to him, not even military weapons could produce such a clean cut. Despite the accusation hidden beneath his words, Shansha remains completely calm. He listens with a faint smile, maintaining an innocent expression. Then, as though genuinely curious, he asks whether it could have been some kind of special weapon used by the same person. Taking his performance even further, he asks the professor whether, once they figure out what weapon it is, they could recommend one for him. Lin plays along and sarcastically asks what he would possibly need something like that for. Shansha responds with the most carefree smile imaginable. Obviously for cutting steaks. He explains that the heat keeps making the refrigerators unstable, causing the meat to become tough, so he needs a really good knife to deal with it. Even the brilliant professor is left speechless by that ridiculous answer for a moment. The system registers Shansha's audacity and confirms that he has earned points for it. However, Lin completely ignores the provocation and decides to return to the serious subject. He states that regardless of the jokes, both deaths were clearly caused by the same person. Someone with extremely professional technique, certainly nothing like an ordinary citizen. Shansha responds coldly, suggesting that maybe those people were simply unlucky and got involved with something they should have stayed away from. With a faint smile, the professor points out an interesting coincidence. Both victims had gotten into direct conflicts with Shansha. The conversation falls silent for several seconds as the tension weighs heavily on the room, with the two men staring each other down and waiting to see who will make the next move. Shansha breaks the tension by slipping back into his sarcastic attitude. He says the professor really has a talent for jokes and repeats that he's nothing more than an ordinary person. Then, with a provocative look, he points toward the medical kit Lin brought and asks whether the professor thinks he's about to die too. The white medical kit marked with a red cross sits on the table like a silent omen. Changing the subject, Shansha asks how the professor managed to find his address when he had never revealed it. Lin takes out his phone and shows him the answer, claiming that someone Shansha knows provided the address. For the first time during the conversation, Shansha's expression changes. A drop of sweat runs down his face as he realizes what that means. On the phone screen is an image of Jiang. He's seriously injured and connected to a ventilator. Lin calmly explains that he's keeping him alive. Shansha asks about Zhanyang's condition, but his thoughts are already turning dark. He knows Zhanyang has a strong will to survive, but falling into the hands of that manipulative old man is an even worse fate than death. Lin then makes his true intentions even clearer. With a satisfied smile, he explains that Zhanyang is adapting to the new form of therapy. According to him, under these extreme heat conditions, the human body will inevitably be forced to evolve. Zhanyang simply started the process before everyone else. Shansha feels a chill of horror as he realizes what that really means. The professor is conducting human experiments. The sarcasm disappears from Shansha's face. He demands to know the real reason for the professor's visit. Meanwhile, inside Lin's laboratory, Zhanyang's hand begins trembling violently. Veins bulge beneath his skin. His eyes suddenly open, revealing an empty and unnatural glow. The transformation has already begun. Suddenly, his body arches as he lets out a scream of pain. His muscles begin expanding as his body swells in an unnatural way. A system alert shows that his vital signs are completely unstable, while his genetic mutation rate reaches 37%. Back in Shansha's room, Lin places a syringe filled with blue liquid on the table. He slowly pushes it toward Shansha, presenting the substance as an immune booster he developed. According to him, the substance has no side effects. Shansha doesn't miss the chance to mock him again. He looks at the liquid and remarks that it looks like cranberry soda. Then he asks whether he needs to shake it before drinking. Once again, the provocation leaves Lin speechless, and the system awards Shansha even more points. But then Shansha picks up the syringe. His tone changes completely. He admits that he knows Lin isn't an ordinary person. He also says that he understands the logic behind all of this. Even if the survival rate is below 10%, some people will inevitably evolve. Holding the syringe, he stares directly at the professor. Then he sums up the proposal coldly. "You want me to evolve using the same method you used on Zhangqiang?" Lin calmly adjusts his glasses and attempts to justify his actions. In his view, sacrifices are unavoidable when pursuing scientific progress. He proposes that Shansha cooperate with his research so they can discover a way for humanity to adapt. Shansha responds with nothing more than a provocative smile. "What if I say no?" Without losing his composure, Lin describes the future he believes is coming. Unknown diseases, mutated creatures, and heat that grows deadlier with every passing day. According to him, cooperation is the only way to survive for much longer. Before leaving, he places the syringe on the table. With a smug smile, he says the doors to his laboratory will always be open if Shansha ever changes his mind. As the professor walks away from the house, his true thoughts become clear. He acknowledges that Shansha has a strong mind, but that only makes the situation more interesting. To him, living specimens are far more valuable than simple genetic data. Zeno won't be able to escape. Inside the house, the syringe remains on the table like a symbol of the dangerous offer. Shansha watches the object in silence. He thinks about Lin's twisted mindset and how the man uses grand speeches to justify experimenting on living people. Staring at the syringe, he reaches an unavoidable conclusion. If he doesn't eliminate that man, he'll never have any peace. A cold determination settles across his face. With a dark smile, he accepts the challenge, but on his own terms. "If you want to study evolution, then I'll show you what true evolution looks like." The scene shifts back to the laboratory. Zhanyang no longer looks remotely human. His body has become enormous, covered in exaggerated muscle. His eyes burn with savage fury as he unleashes a terrifying roar. Inside the control room, Professor Lin watches the monitors. The data confirms that the mutation is complete. Zhanyang's vital signs are stable, but his sanity indicator has dropped to 0. Lin smiles with satisfaction. His experiment was a success. Hatred, fear, and pain had proven to be the perfect catalysts. With a malicious tone, he gives the creature its first command. "Zhanyang, you have been reborn. Now bring Shansha to me. I want him alive." Beside him, his assistant Suri watches everything in horror. She asks whether turning living people into monsters can really be considered human evolution. Lin turns toward her and asks how she feels about taking part in her first real experiment. A moment later, he coldly orders her to activate the system. Suri protests. Horrified, she reminds him that this is human experimentation and that they have already crossed every ethical boundary. Lin simply laughs with contempt. According to him, morality is a luxury during an apocalypse. Zhanyang's sacrifice could allow many more people to survive. He then presses a red button on the console. The final order is given. Zan Yang, move out now. The creature immediately responds. The veins bulging across his body tighten as he lets out a roar. He's ready to unleash all of his fury. Over the communicator, Lin repeats the order with a cruel smile. Bring Shanxia to me. I want him alive. With a deafening metallic crash, the monster who was once Zan Yang smashes through a heavy steel door and steps onto the street beneath the light of the full moon. Among the skyscrapers, a ruined building stands out. It's Shanxia's shelter, and it's about to become the stage for a confrontation. Leaping across rooftops, Zan Yang races toward his target with superhuman speed and strength. He reaches the hallway outside Shanxia's apartment, but no one is there. His deformed muscles tense. A low growl escapes his throat. His senses tell him that his prey is nearby. He sniffs the air, then suddenly turns his head. He has detected something, a presence he knows all too well, and it awakens his fury. Down below in the darkness, Shanxia leans against a tree, calmly waiting. Pretending to be surprised, he greets him and comments on how much his appearance has changed. A mocking smile spreads across Shanxia's face. He asks whether he should still call him Zhangqiang, or if Wonka would be more appropriate, since that's a common name for a dog. The taunt hits exactly where it needs to. Zan Yang's fury explodes. The system immediately registers the result. Shanxia has just gained 1,000 rage points. Consumed by hatred, the creature can barely speak. He stammers. Zan Yang manages to spit out a furious threat, telling Shanxia that he must die. Seeing this reaction, Shanxia smiles at the transformation. His enemy's emotions become even more intense, increasing the system's point collection efficiency by more than 30%. Finding the situation interesting, Shanxia begins backing away and invites him to follow him somewhere more open. He explains that he'd rather not fight right outside his home and disturb the neighbors, especially since if anything in his shelter gets damaged, Zan Yang wouldn't have the money to cover the repairs. The chase eventually leads them into an empty underground parking garage. Zan Yang drops onto all four limbs like an animal ready to pounce. Shanxia prepares to fight and rapidly swings his arm. He warns his opponent that he's about to experience the power of his spatial slash. The invisible attack shoots forward and strikes Zan Yang in the chest. However, much to Shanxi's surprise, the attack doesn't break through. The creature's mutated skin has become so thick that the slash fails to inflict any damage. Shanxi studies him carefully. His skin has become tougher than expected. With his teeth clenched and hatred burning in his eyes, Zan Yang growls Shanxia's name and launches a counterattack. The creature charges with brutal force, but Shanxia moves with superior agility and easily dodges the attack. As he continues moving around the parking garage, he doesn't miss the chance to provoke him. He reminds Zan Yang that he was always all muscle and no brains, then points out that now he can't even speak properly. The taunt works. The system registers more than 12,200 rage points. Shanxia approaches the creature again and examines his distorted appearance. With a contemptuous tone, he comments that he really has become ugly. Then he sarcastically adds that Professor Lin has terrible taste and maybe should have recommended him to a good stylist. The humiliation finally pushes Zan Yang's already shattered mind past its breaking point. A massive surge of fury takes over him. Shanxia receives an incredible 2,000 negative emotion points. The creature's body begins trembling as it swells even further. But the moment Shanxia notices the strange change, his smile disappears. Something is wrong. Zan Yang's reaction to the anger is far more intense than it should be. That's when Shanxia realizes he may have made a mistake. Something moves behind him at an absurd speed. He doesn't have time to react. He can barely track the movement with his eyes. Zan Yang is now much faster than before. Suddenly, razor-sharp bone spikes burst from his body. They rip through Shanxia's hoodie and tear into his skin. His rage has triggered another mutation. Shanxia grabs his side as blood runs between his fingers. For the first time in the fight, he has actually been injured. He curses under his breath after realizing what new ability his enemy has gained. Zan Yang can now grow bone spikes. Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, Professor Lin watches everything with scientific excitement. He declares that this is a second-stage mutation. According to him, extreme emotional spikes can trigger entirely new stages of evolution. Excited by the discovery, he orders Surui to record every detail, but she writes down the data with a horrified expression. She can't help wondering whether turning people into monsters can really be considered a way of saving humanity. Back in the underground parking garage, Shanxia regains his balance and faces the creature Zan Yang has become. The fight has just become far more dangerous. The transformation finally completes. Bone spikes erupt from Zan Yang's back as his muscles violently contract. The creature unleashes a deep, terrifying roar. His mouth forces out the name of his enemy, Shen Hao. His feet deform into claws powerful enough to crack the ground. Overwhelmed by hatred, Zan Yang charges straight at Shanxia like a blur of spikes and crimson fury. But Chanel remains completely calm. He simply shifts slightly to the side. The attack misses him entirely. The creature stares at him in frustration and fury after failing to land his first strike. Even with blood on his chest and at the corner of his mouth, Shanxia shows no pain or concern. In fact, everything is going exactly according to plan. A system notification appears, confirming that Zan Yang's energy continues to rise. Shanxia wipes the blood from his lip and thinks he only needs a little more to get what he wants, so he decides to keep provoking him. He asks if that's really all Zan Yang can do, then mocks him by saying he looks like nothing more than a porcupine after growing a few extra bones. The taunt works immediately. The system records more than 1,000 rage points and another 1,000 points of humiliation. Zan Yang bares his teeth and roars with absolute fury. Shansha gives him a malicious smile and keeps the verbal assault going. He reminds Zan Yang that when he was nothing more than a cheap thug, at least he had the guts to fight with an iron pipe from a distance. Then he asks whether Zan Yang really thinks a few injections and some new bones have suddenly made him important. The creature screams, consumed by fury and humiliation. Shansha delivers his final provocation. He tells Zan Yang that no matter how many times he changes, he'll still be nothing more than a dog that bites whenever Dr. Lin gives the command. The system records another emotional explosion, adding more than 1,700 rage points. Zan Yang completely loses control. Inside the control room, Professor Lin watches everything with a satisfied smile. He tells Surui that the emotional peak has been reached and says Shansha is proving extremely useful by pushing his test subject this far. With a cruel look, Lin Feng encourages the creature through the monitors. He wants Zan Yang even angrier, so he can test the limits of the mutation, but Surui watches the scene with growing concern. She tries to understand what Shansha is really planning by pushing Zan Yang's fury to its absolute limit. Zan Yang's body erupts with an intense red aura. He releases a deafening roar. Then, a storm of bone spikes launches forward. The projectiles slice through the air directly toward Shen Hao, but Shansha moves with astonishing agility and effortlessly dodges every one of them. His expression doesn't change at all. He asks if that's everything the monster can do. For a moment he stops and glances over his shoulder with a provocative smile. Then he turns his attention back to the creature. If you've got the courage, try again. The final provocation works perfectly. Zhang fury completely explodes. The system records a massive gain of 2,800 points. Then, a critical notification appears. Negative emotions have reached the limit of 30,000. Your ability can evolve into Spatial Rift, Annihilation. Without hesitation, Shansha confirms the evolution at the exact moment Zan Yang launches one final desperate attack. Shansha simply says, "Now." A terrifying power forms in the palm of his hand. A tiny sphere of absolute darkness appears, warping the space around it. This is the power of Spatial Rift, Annihilation. Zan Yang's bone spikes disintegrate before they can even touch the sphere. When the void reaches the creature's body, the result is instantaneous. His arm and leg aren't cut off, they simply cease to exist, erased from reality. Shansha watches the scene with complete indifference. Mutilated and defeated, Zan Yang collapses to the ground. He stares in shock at the places where his limbs used to be. My hand, my... His voice trembles as he struggles to understand what just happened. Zin Han simply watches without emotion, like someone who just crushed a bug. He walks over to the dying creature and tears the collar from Zan Yang's neck, the device that connected him to his creator. Speaking directly into the collar's camera, Shansha sends a message to the man watching from the other end. He tells Professor Lin that his latest test subject was seriously underwhelming, and that next time, he should send someone who actually knows how to fight. Back at the laboratory, the transmission abruptly ends. Professor Lin reacts by grinding his teeth in anger. He mutters the name of his new enemy, Shansha, but his anger soon gives way to something else. A twisted smile creeps across his face. Then Professor Lin breaks into a sinister laugh. Deep down, Lin admits that Shansha is unlike anyone else he's encountered. Even so, he promises himself that sooner or later, he will capture him. Meanwhile, back in the underground parking garage, Zan Yang's body begins slowly breaking apart. Shansha walks toward what remains of him. To finish the job, he places a hand on his defeated enemy's head and looks down at his miserable condition. He remarks that after seeing how pathetic Zan Yang has become, he'll help put an end to his suffering. With a cold stare and not a hint of emotion in his voice, Shansha ends Zan Yang's life. Silence once again settles over the parking garage. Shansha turns to leave, but something suddenly interrupts the moment. Footsteps begin echoing through the darkness, and they definitely aren't his. The sound is far too refined for a place like this. It belongs to immaculate dress shoes walking across filthy concrete. A voice soon emerges from the darkness, accompanied by slow applause. Magnificent, truly magnificent. Shansha immediately turns around and goes on alert. His expression turns cold as he demands to know who's there. His eyes lock onto the direction of the voice. He's ready for another fight, because apparently one nightmare wasn't enough for tonight. A man eventually steps out of the shadows, walking with complete confidence. He approaches the pool of blood left behind by Zan Yang without showing the slightest hesitation. He's dressed in an elegant suit, white gloves and glasses. With a silk handkerchief, he casually wipes his nose. He introduces himself as Shansha Singh. With a hint of disdain, he remarks that the smell of death has always seemed rather primitive to him. Despite his obvious disgust with the surroundings, he congratulates Shansha on the fight he just witnessed. He claims that although the world is entering a desperate new era, it will also become a time when new gods emerge. Zeno continues studying the stranger with extreme caution. He doesn't lower his guard for even a second. As Shansha Xing speaks, Shansha quietly gathers his energy, prepared to react at the slightest sign of danger. Xing continues with his assessment. He says that someone capable of displaying such precision and destructive power could never be merely an incomplete product created by the madman Lin Feng. The moment he hears that name, Shenxia goes on maximum alert. He directly asks whether Shen Xiaxin knows Lin and whether he works with him. Xing smiles and shakes his head. No, actually, it's the exact opposite. He explains that he's there specifically to stop the professor from causing any more tragedies. As proof, he reveals that he was the one who sent the anonymous warning telling Shen Xia to be careful around Lin. The revelation catches Shen Hao off guard. He can't understand how this stranger managed to get his number. Shen Xiaxing then pulls a black business card from his pocket. He introduces himself once again, saying his name is Shen Xiaxing, and that he belongs to a group called ARC. He explains that his organization has its own highly efficient intelligence network. He came there specifically to invite Shen Xia to join them and pursue what he calls true evolution. Shell remains silent, processing everything he's just heard. He remembers that in this new life, awakened individuals appeared much earlier than he expected. Shen Xiaxing continues explaining. According to him, ARC's method of evolution is far superior to Lin's approach. While the professor creates grotesque and irrational mutations, ARC seeks complete enhancement. Its members evolve while retaining both their rational minds and human appearance. Still suspicious, Shen Xia asks directly, "What exactly is this ARC organization?" Shen Xiaxing explains that ARC is a group dedicated to finding awakened individuals. They believe the world is on the verge of undergoing a massive transformation, and that only exceptional individuals will survive the coming era. According to him, these people will board the ark of a new humanity. And Shengel is exactly the kind of elite they're looking for. The offer comes with grand promises of power, control, and transcendence. According to Shen Xiaxing, this is the true path to becoming a god, something Lin Feng could never provide. Shen Xia listens in silence, but when he finally responds, his reaction is completely different from what the man expected. He dismisses the entire speech, saying it sounds more like a con artist's pitch than a genuine path to godhood. Shening remains completely still. Suddenly, a cotton swab slices through the air. The tiny object flies forward at incredible speed and strikes the business card in his hand. The cotton swab pierces straight through the card and splits it in half before his eyes. Xening is momentarily stunned. Shen Xia simply smiles. He sarcastically comments that his hand must have slipped. He then turns his back and rejects the invitation without hesitation. He makes it clear that he hates it when other people try to decide the direction of his life. Whether it's a mad scientist like Lin Feng or a hypocritical elitist like Shen Xiaxing, Shen Xia will follow his own path, and he adds that he's used to being alone and doesn't need anyone telling him how to live. Even after being rejected, the suited man shows no irritation, and instead, he seems even more intrigued. With a strange smile, he remarks that Shan Xia certainly has courage. Shan Xiaxing admits that he's starting to like him more and more. As Shan Xia walks away, Shan Xiaxing leaves him with one final warning. He says that in a world on the verge of collapse, growing stronger through sheer survival might keep someone alive for a while, but it won't last forever. Shan Xia answers without even turning around. He says he doesn't need the man's concern. The next instant, space twists around his body, and he disappears completely. Shan Xiaxing finishes his sentence while staring at the empty space where he stood. He says that once Shan Xia realizes even one person's power has limits, ARC's doors will always be open to him. Despite trying to remain composed, that sudden display of power leaves Shening deeply unsettled. The system registers his emotions as contempt, surprise, and even a hint of apprehension. For once, he has nothing to say. A few meters away, Shan Xia reappears. He finds it interesting that despite appearing emotionally stable, Shan Xiaxin still managed to generate a considerable amount of negative emotion. His eyes sharpen with determination. The word limit continues echoing through his mind. If a limit truly exists, then he'll break it. But before pursuing this new goal, Shan Xia remembers that there's still one unfinished problem. His expression turns cold, and with absolute determination, he realizes that it's finally time to settle his conflict with Lin Feng once and for all. At what appears to be an abandoned building, Shan Xia approaches and uses a portal to enter. Inside, he discovers the bizarre creatures being cultivated inside the tanks, experiments more disturbing than anything seen at the Arkan Asylum. So this is Lin Feng's idea of scientific progress. Disgusting, the protagonist mutters. He says a place like this deserves to be burned to the ground. At that moment, the beast appears, ready to dedicate itself to the so-called great cause of humanity. Lin says, the evolution of Shan Xia is left speechless. After all, the entire thing disgusts him. But Lin argues that the virtue of the people surrounding Shan Xia is nothing but hypocrisy, because every step of humanity's advancement has always come with piles of bodies and rivers of blood, and Shan Xia's gift shouldn't be wasted so casually on ordinary matters, or rather, mortal ones. Tired of listening to the endless nonsense, Shan Xia simply asks, "Are you done talking?" Shan Xia says he has no interest in all that boring talk about human evolution, but Lin has disturbed his peace. That's why he's prepared to use his power to banish the man for good. Lin simply smiles at his youthful confidence and asks, "Don't be foolish. Stand with me, and you won't have to suffer the consequences." "Oh really? And what if I say no?" the protagonist asks. Lin then pulls out the classic little button controller. It's always the little button controller. He shows Shansha exactly what's waiting for him. The moment he presses the button, the various apocalyptic mutants inside the tanks burst out all at once. Shansha strikes one of them, and for a moment it seems to work, but the creature and the others keep charging forward as Lin says, "Stay, Shansha. Join me and I'll make you strong." Shansha smiles. Those creatures are nothing to him, and even with his stamina running low, he keeps attacking, advancing and defending himself. He gives Lin a firm no before landing. The protagonist mocks his pathetic monsters, saying that all the effort Lin has spent throughout his life has amounted to practically nothing. Human evolution. Everyone knows that's complete nonsense. He says he's going to send Lin back to wherever he came from. That's when the deranged Lin drops to his knees and admits that Shansha is truly an impressive person. However, he reveals that he has already sent all of his research data to the mutation serum. The seeds have already been planted. Hearing that, Shannon decides to leave immediately, but he turns around when he comes face to face with Lin's assistant, Donkey, whose voice is as sweet as an angel's. "Don't worry, darling. I'm not going to hurt you." After something like that, even I would have stopped. She approaches the protagonist and gives him a punch to help stop the bleeding. We don't know whether the protagonist was looking at her hand or at her, but anyway, while the robot's voice screams warnings throughout the facility, the assistant assures him that the serum is safe. Wisely, Shansha asks why he should trust her. She admits that he's right to be suspicious, but says that if he wants to know what truly matters, he should follow her. She then leads him to the supply storage room. She explains that her professor stockpiled all of it because he knew the apocalypse was coming, and now Shansha can take whatever he wants before she leaves the place. She says she studied under Lin because she once saw him as the ideal of a true scientist, but after discovering that he was experimenting on humans, she felt guilty. She says she's going to the Northern Research Institute to help with their studies. She hopes that the next time they meet, the world will be at least a little better. Yeah, people come and go, just like the song says. After she leaves, Shansha takes inventory of the supplies, and there's plenty of everything, from medicine to canned peaches, but now it's all his. He stuffs everything into his spatial storage ability, and then sets the entire place on fire. When he gets home, he sees that the heat outside has climbed to a brutal 58 degrees. Multiple regions have been devastated by the extreme temperatures. Plants have died, while gases are released as the ice melts. People are succumbing to the hellish heat. Shansha knows the situation outside is only going to get worse. He needs to become stronger and faster. He has more than enough supplies, but his storage space is becoming increasingly packed with water. So he decides to have a little chat with Mukong and find out how the sales are going. Kif had said he would meet Shansha that night to deliver some goods. That evening, they meet in an alley to check whether it would be a suitable place for the exchange. Suddenly someone appears, and Shansha asks if he is there to buy water. The man asks how much water he can take, and Shansha says 2 bottles, although for this particular guy, 1 bottle should be plenty. The man clearly isn't happy with that answer, so Shansha decides to raise the price. The interface shows his anger increasing by another 33 points, and Shansha makes the guy thank him for it. The anger rises by another 79 points, and Shansha tells him to bring more items to trade next time. The next person to show up is Old Wang. He came to buy water for his neighbor, who is raising her grandson alone. He explains that he is doing it for the child, who is suffering under the extreme heat. He hands the water over to his neighbor Lu, and she thanks him. But the moment the old man leaves, she heads to another neighbor's apartment and knocks on the door. When the man answers, she says, "Mr. Zhao, this is today's offering." She then hands the water over to him. Back at the selling point, Mukong says that something has gone wrong. When he checks his smartphone, he sees that one of the buyers has canceled the purchase. Shansha immediately becomes suspicious because this is already the 3rd time it has happened. It looks like someone might be keeping an eye on their customers. Just then, they hear a noise coming from the alley. It happens fast. A group of men suddenly appears, shouting, "Hey guys, it's here." Shansha speaks up, and one of the thugs immediately snaps, "You can't secretly sell water around here, you bastard." Another one accuses Shansha of getting people addicted to buying water. But the protagonist simply replies, "Selling water is wrong, so drink your own urine." That sends the men into a rage, and the system records another 12 points of anger. The old man claims they are members of the Pure Water Society and that they serve Lan, before declaring, "Give us your water and offer it to Lord Xian." He then raises his hands and starts performing some kind of ritual. Yeah, these guys are definitely operating on a completely different difficulty setting. Shansha says he would expect nothing less from a bunch of lunatics worshipping someone even crazier than they are. And honestly, he was being pretty generous with that description. For the fanatics, that insult is the final straw. The old man declares that once Shansha witnesses Yan's miracles, he will fall to his knees. Shansha is clearly having his least sarcastic day ever, so he replies, "Wow, I'm terrified. You said selling water is bad, so I guess I'll drink it." He then downs the entire bottle in one go, which must have tasted pretty good in that brutal heat. The men look even more stunned than angry, and their fury rises again as the interface displays another increase in points. That's when Shansha says, "Z King is your god? Let me tell you something. He's just and I'll give a barrel of water to anyone who curses him." He was really holding back. "Blasphemy," the old man screams. But then one of his followers steps forward and asks, "Seriously, man, if we curse our Zukiang, you'll really give us a barrel of water?" Shansha confirms it, promising a free barrel to anyone willing to curse their god. The old man completely loses it and shouts, "You miserable fools, how dare you turn against our god?" One of the followers finally snaps back, "God my ass, he's just a who thinks he's a god. To hell with you and him." The old man orders them to grab the man, saying he will punish him personally. The group then begins to leave. Mukang admits that the whole thing actually scared him. Sheng warns that if they keep interfering with his business, things are going to get ugly. As the story continues, the neighborhoods become flooded with messages from the Pure Water Society. Jay heads to a beautiful cathedral. His first goal is simply to assess the place and find out who this so-called god Kanan really is. Inside the chapel, a woman kneels at the feet of a man sitting on a throne by the window, while Shansha quietly watches. The man everyone calls God Kanan begins pouring water over the woman, who is suffering from hyperthermia. Immediately afterward, all of his followers begin worshipping his name. Shansha watches the man carefully, trying to figure out exactly what kind of person he is. The woman, who has just awakened, declares that she will now serve her savior, and Kanan replies, "Don't worry, God remembers those who make offerings to him, but he rejects the greedy." He then looks toward the woman's generous figure. He tells her that soon she will make an offering to him, one that will be soft and succulent. Before long, more and more people start bringing their water jugs to him. Kay promises that he will purify the water for everyone. That's when the people outside discover Shenbi snooping around the place. The man tells him that impure people aren't welcome there. So the protagonist suddenly unleashes his acting skills and says, "I'm sorry, I was blind and I'm almost out of water." At this point, it's hard to decide whether his acting is worse than the stupidity of the men who take him directly to meet Kanan. Once inside, Shansha kneels down and claims that he is willing to give up everything in exchange for Kanan's mercy. Kanan says he has heard about him and is willing to give him a second chance. The protagonist takes the opportunity to look around and notices that Kanan is keeping almost all the water people bring while giving them only a small portion in return. In the end, he simply thanks him. At that moment, one of Kanan's followers rushes into the room in a panic and cries out, "Aunt Lu, your granddaughter just collapsed from hyperthermia." Aunt Lu breaks down, explaining that she gave the girl the holy water that had supposedly been blessed by God himself. Shansha hears the whole conversation and remembers that she was the same woman who sent the old man to buy water from him just to make an offering. Lu begs Kian for water, practically pleading with him to help. Kian simply replies, "Woman, your faith is weak and you are not devoted enough." Lil insists that she did everything he asked, but the smooth-talking fraud tells her to stop making excuses. He announces that he will perform a miracle at noon the next day, and everyone thanks him enthusiastically. Shansha just smiles. The old man who previously argued with him in the alley returns and hands Shansha a bandana to wear around his arm. It is the symbol of their religion. He explains that because Shansha donated so much water to their brotherhood, Guan will forgive his sins. For the moment, the protagonist puts the armband on, then smiles the instant they turn their backs. They are complete idiots. They never even considered that Shansha had planted signal transmitters inside the water. Sometime later, Chanel makes his way to the hidden water storage area. He opens the door and discovers an absolutely ridiculous stockpile inside. It contains everything Kanan has been taking from his followers whenever he demands their so-called offerings. But then Shansha hears something moving. He quietly slips between the shelves until he gets a clear view of the people inside. It is the woman who was supposedly healed earlier, along with Kanan. Out of nowhere, Kanan slaps the woman across the face. He snaps, "You idiot. I told you to act like someone who had just been healed." Almost nobody believed that performance. She apologizes and explains, "I'm sorry, using that power drains too much of my strength." Still hidden beside the shelf, Shansha realizes that the woman must be an awakened. Now things are getting interesting. Shansha wastes no time and heads straight toward whatever fate has waiting for him. He goes directly to Aunt Lil's granddaughter, who is suffering from a severe case of hyperthermia. Landing at the window, he sees just how badly the little girl is struggling in the heat. Without hesitation, Shansha throws several bottles of water toward her. She manages to mumble something, but Shansha immediately tells her, "Don't say anything, little girl. Drink this water, drink all of it, just keep drinking." The following day, the sun is blazing overhead at noon. Kanan sits down, assumes the pose of a true hermit, and begins delivering the same religious nonsense as always. Yet somehow, a divine aura appears to radiate from him. Aunt Lu becomes emotional and declares that he truly must be a divine being. But at the very back of the crowd, Jang keeps his eyes on the honey-haired girl. She has powers, and she is the one creating Kanan's so-called divine aura. That is how the fraud has been fooling everyone. What a scam artist, so naturally it is time to have a little fun. The protagonist comes up with a plan to take control of her powers, and that's exactly what happens. The girl suddenly becomes nervous and asks, "What's happening?" All of a sudden, she loses control of her abilities, and Kanan is the one affected most, causing his divine aura to disappear. He tells the girl to stay close to him and perform the act properly. Right at noon, the entire crowd watches in anticipation, waiting for their miracle. If only miracles worked on a schedule, right? But Kanan remains seated, and absolutely nothing happens. The girl finally takes drastic action. She simply walks away, leaving the smooth-talking fraud standing there with nowhere to go. She circles around the crowd, approaches the protagonist from behind, and wraps her arms around him. Well, that certainly got everyone's attention. The narrator jokes that even he would have melted from that, especially in weather this hot. Anyway, the girl stays pressed close to the protagonist as Shansha says, "Well, this is pretty nice, huh? Keep going." She explains that her ability allows her to force the heat inside a person's body out of them. She adds that she can do much more than that, including forcing heat directly out through the target's head and heart. When she does that, the person's blood pressure drops dramatically. Shansha suddenly feels his head spinning, while the girl's expression becomes darker than before, beautiful and deadly. Her name is Lin Jing, and now, let's take a look at some of her memories. On that day, she was helping a kitten that was close to collapsing from the heat. From the window of an apartment, she hears a man shouting at her, "Lin Jing, get over here right now." Not long afterward, the man begins assaulting her, insisting that she repay him for everything he had done for her. He tells her that she will have to sell her body in exchange for water because he knows she is thirsty. But before things can go any further, someone intervenes. Kanan appears with 2 henchmen. Whether heaven or hell sent this guy is anyone's guess, but he quickly deals with her attacker. Kanan then approaches Lin and says, "I saw it. The kitten you helped was already dead, but you brought it back to life." He tells her that she possesses a gift from God and that if she comes with him, they can save lives together. Now, back in the present, the story returns to the protagonist. With Yan watching, the girl knocks him out and forces him to his knees. Finally fed up with all this nonsense, the protagonist moves faster than anyone can react and takes down the men holding him. Everyone immediately freezes in shock and starts calling him a demon. Jan simply tells them that the real demons are the men standing beside them, a group of fanatics, and standing right in front of them was the little girl, Ling, whom the protagonist had saved the night before. Aunt Lu pointed proudly at her and said, "See? My granddaughter is healed thanks to the prayers I offered." But Ling immediately shot back, "Are you people idiots, or do you actually have something wrong with you?" She pointed straight at Shensha and said, "This guy saved me last night. He gave me electrolytes and fresh water to drink. It had absolutely nothing to do with your so-called miracle." She even added that if she had depended on their ridiculous religion, she would have been dead long ago. Everyone was stunned by her words when suddenly a sharp gunshot rang out, and Ling dropped to the ground. Kanan was the one responsible. He had shot her like a coward, but something strange happened because there was no blood on the ground, and Kanan stared in disbelief before saying, "What? I'm sure I hit her." That's when Shansha revealed the bullet suspended in place by his dark power. Kanan was shocked to discover that the protagonist was also an awakened person with supernatural abilities. With no other options left, Kanan pulled out a serum and injected it into his arm. His body immediately began undergoing a terrifying transformation until he became a monstrous creature. Shensha quickly realized that the serum was the same one developed by Lingle Dong. The sinister Kanan complained that it had cost him a fortune before charging at the protagonist at incredible speed. Shensha struggled to evade him, and Kanan eventually caught him with a powerful strike. Both of them were sent flying and crashed down into the lower gardens. Like every cowardly villain ever, Kanan immediately blamed the protagonist, claiming that Shensha had ruined everything. But while they were still falling, Shensha activated his spatial distortion ability. That allowed him to remain suspended in the air while the transformed Kanan continued downward and crashed below. The crowd immediately began calling Shensha a demon, but he couldn't have cared less. His attention was focused on Ling, who was lying unconscious on the ground. After checking her condition, he realized that she had simply passed out from the extreme heat. To help her recover, he summoned a bottle of water. Apparently that was the final straw for the people watching, because Aunt Lu declared that Shansha was the devil's reincarnation, and Ling was a witch. Shansha simply gave them a cold look and said, "Listen, everyone, I'll only say this once. Stay out of my way." Naturally, they ignored him. They formed a circle around the protagonist, joined hands, and began chanting some bizarre prayer. "To die is to live. To die is to live." Lord Sadler, well, he had already warned them, so the rest was pretty much on them. Since Shensha had told them to leave him alone, he simply eliminated the entire group. And that was that. When Ling finally woke up, Shensha handed her a small bottle of water. "Where's Kian?" she asked. The protagonist calmly replied, "He went to visit hell and bought a one-way ticket." At that moment, Ling's little granddaughter appeared, calling out for her grandmother. She was lucky that the protagonist had spared her, but unfortunately she was devastated after realizing that her entire belief in Kanan had been a lie. She had genuinely believed that the man was a god. Overcome with despair, she climbed over the railing and jumped. It was a horrifying sight that no child should ever have to witness. Poor Ling hugged Shansha with a broken heart as she wiped away her tears. She told them they didn't need to feel sorry for her. Her grandmother had made her own choice and had done everything because she wanted to. What mattered now was that they were safe from Kian, who was probably having dinner with the devil by now. Back at the apartment, Lin Jing admitted that she had always believed Kanan was her savior. The worst part was that everyone now feared and rejected her. Shansha told her that Kanan had been nothing more than a pathetic worm. Lin blamed herself for hurting people, but Shansha reminded her that she had simply been too devoted, and that none of it was entirely her fault. Kanan had even shot her in the end, and there were already rumors about the other twisted things he had done. With that settled, Shansha made an announcement. He told everyone that the man who had controlled the water supply was dead, and that he was now the one in charge of the water. If everyone listened to him, he could even share the supply with them. For the first time in a while, everyone became about 1% more hopeful. After all, water had basically become a luxury. The protagonist already knew exactly what he needed to do. Sometime later, he went to the real estate agency to complete a property transfer because instead of hauling all the water stored inside the building away, he had decided to buy the entire building itself. At least, that's what he told Mukong he was going to do. "I'm turning this building into my fortress," he said. "Now let's jump back to a flashback." And this flashback focused on the protagonist. In his previous life, the temperature had reached a brutal 78 degrees, creating heat that no ordinary human could endure. From the window of his building, Shansha could only stare at the disaster unfolding outside. The second heat wave was about to arrive, and it would be even more intense than the first. But now, back in the present, he already knew what was coming, and more importantly, everyone trusted him. Shansha took a walk through the streets of Lua City. People were saying that they finally felt comfortable again. And they weren't imagining it, because the temperature had actually dropped. There were no more heat waves for the moment. Shansha decided to use this opportunity to turn the building he had acquired into a secure fortress. But first, there were a few other matters to deal with. Unfinished business. The little girl Ling was living with him and happily enjoying her meals. The protagonist eventually asked, "Hey kid, when are you leaving?" He sounded like he genuinely wanted her gone, but that was just his way of acting tough. He fried a mosquito using his powers. It was basically just a hobby. What he really wanted was to find someone capable of generating energy. With the extreme heat, producing electricity had become extremely difficult. He also wanted to check on Lin Jing, so when the little girl ran off, Shansha followed her. However, she had forgotten a little gift for her friend, so she turned around to grab it. Shansha knocked on Lin's door, only to find that it was already open. When he pushed it open, Mouse was greeted by what might have been his final sight. Lin was standing there wrapped in nothing but a towel and covered in sweat. A lot of sweat. She immediately yelled, "You pervert, what are you doing here?" He didn't even know how to respond, or if there was even a response that could save him here. Anyway, Lin kicked him outside, but they were still able to talk through the door. She asked if he was afraid she might become the next leader around there. She knew he wanted to make use of her ability, but she wanted to follow her own interests and see just how far she could go. Then Lin came back looking all cute and innocent again. But the truly important part was that Lin Jing chose to stand alongside the protagonist, and together they helped redistribute the water and supplies stored there to everyone who needed them. To her, it was a chance to atone for the sins of her past. 7 days after the heat waves finally paused, everyone took the opportunity to relax and enjoy the break as much as they could. Meanwhile, Shan Shao was figuring out how to build his fortress while working with the limited resources available to him. But down below, he noticed something suspicious. It was a gang. They were talking about a guy who had taken over a building for himself and was supposedly sitting on a huge stockpile of supplies. Their blue-haired leader didn't care who the guy was. All that mattered was going over there and taking everything for themselves. Anyway, let's skip straight to the humiliation. A short while after picking a fight with someone who was minding his own business, the entire gang was lying on the ground feeling miserable. They had been absolutely destroyed. During these breaks between the heat waves, plenty of criminals had started making their moves. Shang already knew this. But after the protagonist beat down several groups, they wisely decided to keep their distance from his building. Meanwhile, at the government headquarters, they noticed the unusual calm surrounding the neighborhood where the protagonist lived. The general asked a soldier whether that was the same neighborhood where the religious gang had been driven out. The soldier confirmed that it was. But the general immediately sensed that something was off. He knew there was something unusual happening there. It had never been an ordinary neighborhood. His assistant said there were several things they needed to confirm. While reviewing the security footage, they discovered what had happened on the day of the miracle. They saw Ian lying down below while Shan Shao was absorbing the aura from the rooftop. The general became intrigued and immediately ordered his men to investigate. It didn't take long for them to mobilize. That night, they arrived in Luo City fully armed and quickly identified the protagonist's building. One of the soldiers prepared an electric trap designed to catch Shan Shao the moment he stepped outside. The soldiers went in like a classic police raid, breaking down the door first and worrying about introductions later. They stormed into the protagonist's home and announced his arrest, only to freeze when they discovered that the only person inside was little Ling. Her innocent face even produced a single tear. One of the soldiers wondered what a little girl was doing there, but Ling was about to show them who she really was. Pure electricity erupted from her hands with incredible force. She declared, "I'm going to shock your system. Super shock." A massive surge of electricity then blasted through the window and illuminated everything outside. All that could be heard were crackling arcs of electricity and cries of pain. Inside the room, every soldier had been knocked out. The panic was immediate. This little girl was seriously dangerous. The noise was enough to wake Shin, who went to see what was happening. "What the heck happened here, girl?" Shansha asked. Ling replied, "Would you believe me if I said these guys stuck their fingers in the tomato?" Shansha's eyes immediately widened. And if things inside the building had already gotten ugly, what was happening outside was even worse. Tanks and helicopters had surrounded the building, while the captain announced that Shan Shao was completely surrounded. Mukong woke up to all the commotion and went to the window, only to find an entire military force waiting outside. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. The old man nearly had a heart attack when he saw all those soldiers, but Shansha calmly said he would handle it. He stepped outside and faced the soldiers with remarkable patience. "Hello, gentlemen. Could you explain why you broke into my home at 1 in the morning?" The general explained that they had reviewed the footage from the church battle on the day of the miracle, and determined that the protagonist was apparently someone with superhuman abilities. Because of that, Shansha was expected to cooperate and go to the research institute to be studied. Shansha stared at him strangely and replied, "So I'd be locked up like a little lab rat while they stick needles in my backside?" "No, thank you," the captain simply responded. "And who said I was asking whether you wanted to go, kid?" Shansha shot back, "And who said I cared what you wanted, captain?" There was nothing left to discuss. The captain ordered his men to open fire, and the soldiers immediately started shooting while the tanks joined in. A massive barrage of bullets and shells tore through the area. But even more absurd was the energy shield Shansha created to protect himself from the entire barrage. The soldiers' hearts practically dropped into their boots. They didn't believe him. Shansha simply held out his hands and said, "Here, you can have them back." He sent the cannon shots right back and blew up a helicopter that happened to be in the way. "That was just a warning shot," Shansha said. "Next time, my friend, you're the target." Naturally, the general started sweating bullets and said, Okay, calm down, calm down." He explained that a metrology institute had predicted a second heat wave was on its way, and this time, things would be much worse for everyone. Shansha replied, "I already know that." The general then explained that when the crisis finally hit, they would need people like him to help. The Silver One said it wasn't a bad idea, but after seeing that little attitude of theirs, he'd rather stay home in bed and catch some sleep. And for good reason, he wasn't afraid of the military or humanity's darker side. However, there was one small problem. Jen was willing to make a deal, so he told the general that they could negotiate if he was interested. The general agreed that if Shansha was willing to cooperate, they could definitely work something out. Then he asked what exactly the protagonist had in mind. Shansha answered, "I want you to use your military resources to turn my building into an apocalypse-proof fortress." The next day, it looked like the deal had actually gone through. Several military units were already there, hauling in construction materials. The general told Shansha that construction was officially about to begin. They were also going to install a military module there to make transportation easier. Shansha took the opportunity to introduce Lin Jing as his personal secretary. With that settled, the general ordered the construction crews to get to work. He showed them the blueprints, and the machines immediately got busy transporting the solar panels with the utmost care. The general explained that these panels were roughly 10 times more efficient than conventional ones. Shansha told Lin Jing to write that down. The general also provided some of the most powerful generators they had available. Lin Jing dutifully recorded every detail. Then came the armor plating. They welded the titanium steel plates into place. Once finished, the entire place would be practically impossible to break into. The general claimed that even Godzilla couldn't scratch those plates, and then he randomly started clowning around. What a strange man. But the important thing was that construction continued at breakneck speed. They welded the plates into place, installed the security system, and even added a SpaceX satellite signal antenna. They really brought the whole package, folks. The old man was amazed by how quickly everything had come together, but nobody was more excited than Ling. She was absolutely glowing over the results. Lin Jing stared at the finished work with her apple-like eyes. It felt like a dream. And as the old saying goes, if you make a deal, you have to pay up. Meanwhile, the scientists were in the laboratory analyzing the results of Enen's tests. They explained that his body was adapting to the heat, almost like a form of natural selection. They also discovered that some organisms were being affected by electromagnetic disturbances in the Earth's field. In other words, they called it the awakening of abilities. The general quickly realized that, in the future, humans wouldn't be the only ones experiencing these mutations. He looked at Shansha and said, "You don't even look surprised by this, son." The protagonist explained that he wasn't the only human who had awakened abilities. He revealed that there was a group called ARC that gathered people with special abilities, but he had no interest in joining them himself. While examining some images on the computer, the assistant said she was certain that Shansha wasn't the only strange case. She identified Mukong and realized that the man had somehow returned to life, which reminded her that Mukong had once been a deserter from the Army's weapons department. Over in the outpatient department, they noticed that the protagonist's cellular activity was still continuing to evolve. Shansha admitted that he was already getting tired of the whole thing. The general then announced that they had finished collecting the data. He dismissed Shansha, but just as he was leaving, the general received a call from his assistant. She sent him a photo of Mukong and showed it to the protagonist, followed by the million-dollar question. "Do you know this guy?" Shansha recognized Mukong but kept his mouth shut. The general said Mukong was dangerous and that he knew the man was living in the same building as Shansha. He demanded that Shansha hand him over to the authorities without wasting any time. Shansha said, "You seriously think I'd do that?" The general replied that he didn't want to fight him, but Shansha had only one day to turn his friend over. The soldiers then arrived to put some pressure on him, and that's when Shansha realized things had gone south. He simply used his powers and created the perfect distraction to escape. The general immediately ordered, "Suspend construction on his building and gather the troops." "We're going there immediately." Old Man Wang wondered why all the work outside had suddenly stopped. Then, out of nowhere, every sound disappeared. Mukong already knew exactly what that meant. He simply loaded his machine gun and prepared himself. It didn't take long for the special forces to rappel down through the windows. That's when the building itself activated its automatic defenses. 2 agents were hit with a brutal electric shock as they screamed in agony. Lin was stunned. She tried opening the windows, but every single one was locked in place. Then the building's voice announced, "Defense mechanism activated. Everyone remain in your rooms." Ling and Old Man Wang rushed toward the bedroom as the alarm blared. Outside, an explosives team fired a rocket at the entrance door. The explosion shook the entire structure. Hidden inside the bedroom, they could feel the impact. Lin said that something must have happened to Shansha. The poor girl was practically terrified out of her mind. But the ones who were really about to have their hearts ripped out were the soldiers waiting outside. Shansha arrived just in time. "We all know how this is going to end, right?" The other residents stared out their windows, wondering if World War III had officially started. Shansha sent the general a message. "If you dare attack this building, don't blame me for what happens next." That was enough for the commander leading the assault to order his troops to cease fire. The general warned Shansha that if he refused to cooperate and hand over Mukong, the military would withdraw its support, leaving everyone to slowly die from the heat wave that was approaching. Shansha simply smiled. Even the soldiers could tell this whole situation was completely insane. Shansha remained silent, so the general kept applying pressure by threatening to pull all military support. He made sure to point out that things were already getting serious in several countries. Riots, disasters, and countless tragedies were breaking out. To prevent something like that from happening here, the general brought up a project called Firmament. That was what finally caught their attention. "What is Project Firmament?" they asked. Basically, it involved thermal insulation technology, similar to what was widely used in engineering. The plan was to cover the entire city with a gigantic thermal insulation dome. Once sealed inside, the city would be protected from the heat, allowing everyone to live peacefully and even see the sky through the enormous dome overhead. They would simply have to live surrounded by one massive bubble. There wasn't much of a choice. Whether Shansha agreed or not, the project was going forward. After the attack was called off that night, Shansha went to have a face-to-face conversation with Mukong. Mukong confessed that he had once served in the army's weapons department. Back then, he discovered an entire shipment of illegal weapons. And these weren't ordinary weapons either. They included energy cores designed specifically for use in extremely high-temperature environments, and the buyers were foreigners. Being a good soldier, Mukong tried to report everything to his superiors, but instead he was arrested and branded a deserter. After the higher-ups destroyed his career, he stole several weapons and eventually sold them to the protagonist. Shansha said he remembered those weapons. Now he was shocked to finally learn where they had actually come from. And then came the big reveal. The energy cores Mukong had stolen were actually intended for Project Firmament. Mukong was about to ask something when they suddenly heard a noise coming from outside. Shansha said, "Someone's watching us." Looking through the window, he spotted a white-haired woman standing down in the courtyard, looking like a goddess, just like practically every woman in this series. And to make things even more interesting, she was Agent Alyssa. She had somehow entered the building without triggering any of the alarms. That alone showed just how impressive her abilities were. Shansha said he was going downstairs to have a little chat with her, and that's exactly what he did. Alyssa said, "Senchal, we've finally met. Look, cutie, these alarms of yours are pretty weak." "Okay." The protagonist asked who she was. Alyssa didn't hold anything back and suddenly started listing practically everything about Shansha's life. His name, his age, his parents, the school he attended, and probably even the color of the underwear he was wearing. Shansha said, "Who the hell are you, girl?" Alyssa replied that she knew him and understood him better than any of the military personnel did. Shansha said it was pretty creepy to randomly recite another person's entire life story like that, so he warned her that his patience was running out. Alyssa explained that she wasn't there to fight. She said she knew he was building a shelter to survive the apocalypse, but she wanted to know how long he really thought that shelter would last. She also knew about Project Firmament, and warned him that it wasn't nearly as simple as it sounded. That cute little project would only allow a fraction of the population to survive. Wake up and face reality. Jane went pale after hearing that revelation. Alyssa continued, "Use your head. Do you really think a thermal dome over one city could possibly shelter all of humanity?" That's why she made him an offer. "Come with us. Come on, cutie, work with us. My people and I are trying to save humanity." Alyssa explained that she was an agent sent by Nation M specifically to speak with him about this. She already knew the military had told him about Project Firmament. Alyssa promised that Nation M would provide him with everything he needed: equipment, technology, shelters, and supplies. And naturally that struck a chord with Shanshu's sense of patriotism. So he asked, "You want me to betray my country?" Alyssa simply laughed at him and replied, "My dear, this is about saving humanity. We'll give you everything. Even me, if you want." Alyssa said this while leaning against the protagonist, making her intentions very clear. Shansha replied, "My girl, I'm already trying to do that." Alyssa then pressed a finger against his chest and said, I knew you had some attitude, so how about you take me for a little spin and put that to the test, huh, big boy? That's what Alyssa said. Good lord. However, Junk slapped her hand away and said, enough with the naughty games. He made it clear that he wasn't going to be anyone's little toy. Alyssa replied, oh, so it won't be through love? Then we'll have to do it through pain. She pulled out a massive pistol and aimed it directly at the silver one's face. Now that's an awkward situation, gentlemen. Alyssa wasn't holding anything back. She fired for real. The bullet collided with Shansha's powers, and he effortlessly absorbed the projectile. The creamy-haired agent said she had expected him to have a trick like that up his sleeve. That's when she activated those Dragon Ball-style scanning glasses and began analyzing his abilities while collecting data. Shansha told her she could keep scanning him until tomorrow. He still had plenty of power left. That battle on the Day of Miracles had made him exponentially stronger. Alyssa licked her lips and said, delicious. Shansha wasn't exactly a fan of being looked at like that. Alyssa was practically devouring him with her eyes, and who knows what else. That was enough to make him summon a terrifying blood-red aura from deep within his very soul. The aura transformed into a horrifying beast covered in eyes. Alyssa couldn't withstand the pressure of that demonic presence and dropped to her knees. That's when Alyssa pulled off a masterful move, as Haruka would put it, throwing up a smokescreen between the two of them. She escaped, promising that they would meet again. All the neighbors came outside to see what was going on, but by then, there was nothing left to find. The next day, the drills were already working at full speed, digging out the fortifications. Inside, Lu was calling the shots and keeping the workers motivated. Shansha was happy to have this feline companion by his side. The craziest part was that the entire fortress was finished within just a few weeks. The building ended up looking even more impressive than the Avengers Tower. Shansha smiled with satisfaction. Meanwhile, over in Nation M, Alyssa returned to a beautiful mansion after completely failing her mission. Kneeling before her master, she said, "Master, the mission was a failure." Her master simply stroked a black cat and let out a quiet puff, as though he had already expected her to fail. The blonde woman, and I mean that with all caps, said, "I told you someone like that guy would never accept an offer like this. And remember that blonde woman? She was the protagonist's ex-girlfriend." The master explained that there was no need to kill him. After all, he wanted the protagonist to join his group. That left Lissa looking rather disappointed. When the master bared his teeth, we got a glimpse of the monster he might actually be. Back in Lua City, Moliu was walking down the street, already sweating as the temperature continued to rise. Unfortunately, the poor girl was ambushed by a thug who knocked her unconscious. A short while later, she slowly regained consciousness, suspended by ropes with her arms tied up. Luan King, the protagonist's ex herself, stood in front of her and asked, "Hey little miss, you're the girl who's always by Shansha's side, aren't you?" She ran a hand over the girl's body and made a sharp remark about how attractive she was. Liu immediately understood exactly what kind of game she was playing. The blonde said, "If you want to live, lure Shansha here and I'll spare you." But the girl pointed out that such an obvious trick wouldn't be enough to lure the protagonist to her. Luan King gave her one final chance to cooperate, but the girl revealed that she had a motion tracker. The moment Shansha realized she was missing, he would come after them with everything he had. Luan King burst into a sinister laugh and said that was precisely the plan. All she wanted was to lure him outside the fortress, she said, "But before we do anything, let's have a little fun torturing you." Lu began struggling and begging them not to do it as the thugs moved closer. However, the torture session was suddenly interrupted by a massive explosion from behind them. A brutal impact smashed straight through the gate, and what came crashing in was nothing less than a tank. The general was there and ordered his troops to advance. The criminal blonde was arrested, and the general went over to Lu. She was one of the residents of the protagonist's building, and the general explained that his job was to protect everyone living there. The blonde struggled furiously, and the general ordered his men to take them away to enjoy a nice view of the inside of a prison cell. Meanwhile, Xatia was inside his fortress arguing with the general about their agreement. The general promised that the military would continue protecting the building. Shansha agreed to help them, but made it clear that he wouldn't take direct orders from the general. Shansha now had the military backing him. The tables had officially turned in his favor. Army vans rolled down the avenue. Inside them, the criminals were being transported under arrest. Meanwhile, Luan King's mind was flooded with memories. One of them went back to when she had been abandoned, wandering the streets before being approached by a gang of thugs. The poor girl was dragged away and thrown at the feet of a secret organization. And she wasn't the only one there. Her master was there too. "Let's begin the games," he said. After surviving elimination games straight out of round 6, she was covered in scars, and the master declared that she had more than passed the test. She was taken into surgery, where she faced the nightmare of needles while screaming in agony. She became the subject of brutal experiments, and now, back in the present, her arms were beginning to turn into pure water. And it wasn't just her arms, but her entire body. In the blink of an eye, she evaporated right in front of everyone. She was gone. She was gone. The soldiers immediately sounded the alarm at the protagonist's fortress. They were discussing the actions of the Pure Water Society, which had almost completely dissolved and sold off all the goods they had stolen, donating the money to poor families. Linding asked if Shansha was okay with that. Shansha said yes. He was simply returning the stolen property to the people it had originally been taken from. Linden gave him a sweet compliment that left him embarrassed. but then the sink faucet began trembling and creaking. Suddenly, something sinister started leaking out of the faucet. The protagonist released his ability when he realized that this bizarre substance was actually his ex-girlfriend. "Not so fast, handsome. I've already figured out your little space-time trick," she said. She then turned into water once again, and Shansha unleashed his power. It didn't work, as the blonde flowed straight through it and struck him head-on. Lian King explained that this water flowed through her entire body, meaning that even space-time abilities wouldn't work against her. She easily swore that she would kill him. Ninjang rushed over to check whether he was actually okay. Shansha reacted instantly and attempted a spatial cutting technique, but she simply split apart in the middle and turned into water again. "Attacks are completely useless against me, Shansha, and you're finished." That's what she said before diving straight at them with overwhelming force. The shield Shansha created was no match for Luan King's water. As the legendary Bruce Lee once said, water adapts to everything. And that's exactly what happened when Lil slipped right through the barrier and formed bubbles of water around their heads. Yes, believe it or not, the protagonist was actually getting his butt kicked. Luan King kept drowning them without showing the slightest bit of mercy. "You're going to pay, you bastard. You're going to pay for what you did to me." Yeah, folks, that's how it goes when your ex-girlfriend comes back for revenge. You reap what you sow, and sometimes the harvest is a full-blown hurricane. Lil continued drowning him. She was just about to finish the job when something went horribly wrong with her hand. Linding was using her heat dissipation ability. That was one trick the bitter ex definitely hadn't seen coming. Lin made Luan King reverse the way her body released heat. As a result, her entire body started freezing. "What the hell are you doing, you witch? You're going to freeze my entire body," Luan King screamed. She answered, "Yes, you're about to become a popsicle, you harlot. And what should we call it? Harlot flavor or ex-girlfriend flavor?" Well, neither one, because the protagonist got back on his feet and unleashed his strength. The water bubble trapping Lin Zheng froze solid and shattered apart. Luan King was absolutely furious and couldn't believe what she was seeing. She could only watch as Lin Zheng hugged her ex-boyfriend while he said, "We make our own rules here," and that's exactly what happened. With her body completely frozen, Shansha shattered her into pieces, and just like that, Luan King, the bitter ex-girlfriend, met her end. All that remained for Shansha was the beautiful Ling. If he was smart, he'd be careful, because back at the office, the master was stroking his cat when he realized just how badly his plan had failed. "I think it's time we got serious," and that's exactly what he decided to do. Standing beside him were the most ruthless members of his entire gang. These guys were more dangerous than spoiled feijoada. The next morning, the master was enjoying his breakfast. That's when the men appeared before him. The master said, "If the body remained intact and only the brain were replaced, would you still be yourself? Who is who, and am I still me? Consciousness or illusion?" That's what he said. The men stared at each other, having absolutely no idea what the heck he was talking about. Messingon stabbed his Argentine steak with his fork and declared that the true path to acceptance was discovering one's own existence. Anyway, with those completely meaningless words, the men finally left the dining room. They were so suspicious that even the meat the master was eating started looking a little questionable. One of them nearly threw up, wondering if the meat was actually made from something they really didn't want to think about, but you know what I mean. Anyway, the big guy reminded everyone that they needed to hurry. Catching Shansha was what really mattered. Far away from there stood the headquarters of ARC, an imposing building protected from the outside world. Inside, Enhu, the purple-haired guy, was getting chewed out because he had picked a fight with a gang. Shaning, the guy with the glasses, explained that because of what he had done, their alliance with Wen King City had fallen apart. Xing then explained that Huasha only had a handful of S-rank individuals, including the two of them, while everyone else was at a lower level, which meant he needed to show a little more respect. But he was seeing red and wanted to know about Shansha, our protagonist. He wanted to get rid of the trouble once and for all. And since Shink knew he couldn't contain his friend, he explained that Shansha's powers were somewhat different from everyone else's. The thing was, Shansha was evolving, and he simply wouldn't stop. His power level kept climbing to increasingly ridiculous heights. S-rank, and in the future he was expected to rise even beyond that. He then said they could either make the protagonist their ally or eliminate him completely. Taejing told him he was rushing things. To him, it was only a matter of time before Shansha reached S-rank power. But what would happen if another faction recruited him first? Nobody even wanted to imagine it. Ching became extremely worried because acting this way could end up pushing the protagonist straight into the enemy's arms. But Wei argued that they didn't need any more wild cards running around in this world. He summoned his firepower and declared, "Shansha, prepare to die." If Sting couldn't do anything to stop him, then things were about to get ugly whether he liked it or not. Meanwhile, the group of men sent by the master was on its way to capture the protagonist, but they ended up crossing paths with Wan. Wei said, "Hey guys, move along. That kid already has an owner. He's mine." But the blonde giant replied, "Who the hell do you think you are with that bandana on your head? Rambo?" And then they made the incredibly stupid decision to attack Wood. Wei simply used his weakest ability and wiped them off the face of the earth like they were nothing. At the protagonist's fortress, Wei arrived and immediately asked where Shansha was. One of the residents told him that Shansha had gone to the supermarket. Wei was surprisingly polite, thanked the old man, and quickly left. The guy already knew exactly where to look. The protagonist had actually gone out with Ling and Liu. Shansha asked whether the little girl's electrical abilities only worked when she was in a good mood, and she said yes. Shansha even made a little joke about ghosts with the girl. Anyway, they eventually reached their destination. Shansha decided it would be better to let Ling have some fun at the park. The ticket seller welcomed them by saying they looked like a beautiful family. Shansha immediately corrected him and said they weren't a family. Alan said, "Daddy, I want to ride the Ferris wheel." Shansha took a breath and told her not to call him daddy. Liu simply smiled at the two of them. They really did look like a father and daughter. She asked if the amusement park was actually open at this hour. The ticket booth attendant explained that with the world in its current state, people needed to make the most of every day. After all, who knew when it would be their last chance to ride a bumper car? With that, Alan headed inside the park. Lin Jing told him to go play with the little girl while she went to gather some supplies. So Shansha took her onto the Ferris wheel. Across the street, however, things were far less cheerful and much more sinister. Mukong was desperately trying to sniff out the protagonist. The moment he glanced to the side, he recognized Liu as she walked past. Inside the Ferris wheel cabin, Ling pointed toward the highest point, where they spotted a man standing on top of a building. It was Mukong, who apparently had no problem attacking even with a child nearby. Acting purely on instinct, Shansha jumped forward and hugged Ling just as Wei shattered the cabin's glass with his attack. "Who are you?" Shansha asked. Wei answered, "Someone who came here to kill you." He attacked the cabin again, but this time, an energy barrier was protecting the structure. Wenton responded with an even more brutal shoulder charge. The force of the impact sent Shansha flying out of the cabin. Thanks to his teleportation abilities, he managed to escape and land safely on the ground. Unfortunately, that damn Wen managed to capture poor Ling. He told the protagonist to surrender, or he would drop Ling from the top. The little girl struggled desperately in the coward's grip as he threatened to let her fall. She then asked, "Why are you doing this? I don't remember ever doing anything to you." Wei gave her a short and direct answer. She didn't have to do anything. He simply hated people who refused to play by the rules. Then he launched into his usual nonsense, claiming that Shansha was approaching rank S, which made him a problem and blah blah blah. But things became much more serious when he said, "Ak wants to create a world ruled only by those with awakened powers." That immediately caught Shansha's attention. He already knew that the ARC organization existed. Cal said that he knew about the goals of their leader, Xing. Based on that, Wen told him that time was running out. He gave the protagonist another 30 seconds to decide whether he would sacrifice his own life or let the little girl suffer the consequences of his decision. The unfortunate girl was already crying as she dangled upside down over the abyss beneath the Ferris wheel. Shansha then said, "I've already said it, and I'll say it again. I'm not going to throw my life away for someone else." Wei acknowledged that he was a cold man. Ling couldn't believe what she had just heard. She began struggling in terror, and her electrical powers started sending arcs of electricity through the air. Wei realized that she was awakened too, but that still wasn't enough, because he simply released the poor girl and let her plummet while screaming. Of course, our protagonist wasn't exactly the type to stand around and watch someone fall to their death. He acted at the perfect moment and used his space-time powers. A small glider plane stopped Ling's fall. The little girl glided through the air in the tiny aircraft, looking completely thrilled. But damn, Mukong decided it was time to get serious and unleashed his fire abilities. He launched a fireball straight toward Ling, but Shansha shouted, "Ha Ling, use your electrical powers." The moment she did, she activated the glider's system. The aircraft's cannons then fired a terrifying barrage at the enemy. "My god, that's so cool!" the little girl exclaimed, completely amazed by the aircraft. Down below, at the crash site, the enemy emerged. Cannonal was still alive, but one of his eyes had been pierced. He then said, "Shansha, you are worthy of experiencing my true power," which is basically every villain's favorite line. Back at the Grandmaster's residence, an informant reported that everyone sent on the mission to eliminate the protagonist had been wiped out. The Master said that he had already expected as much. The outcome had been obvious. He explained that artificially created awakened beings had their limitations. Then he simply left the dining room. They went to the laboratory, where the awakened were being created inside experimental tubes. The Master walked over to the control panel, and Alyssa asked, "Master, are you really going to do this?" The Master replied that those who were incapable of completing their missions had no reason to exist. Simple as that. When he pressed the button, something began to happen. The Master said that strengthening their powers further was no longer working, so nature itself deserved to be made stronger. The system's voice immediately issued a warning. "Attention, biochemical virus project activated." The Master explained that everything was based on Lingandong's research. They had taken his research and refined it, using the results to create a virus. The Master said he would release the virus, infecting everyone on Earth. Afterward, anyone with awakened powers would undergo a form of selection to separate the weak from the strong before being subjected to mind control. Anyone deemed useless would be exterminated. He simply watched. But Alyssa was horrified by how insane and immoral the Master's plan was. She remembered that when she had been at Shansha's house, she had witnessed the horror hiding inside him, that monstrous beast covered in countless eyes. Shansha was clearly something far beyond the other awakened. And now, only he, only Shansha, only our protagonist, was capable of stopping this deranged master. The master then ordered Alyssa to go there and kill every researcher who was no longer useful to the initiative. She said she understood, but when the time came to carry out the order, she just couldn't do it. Despite everything, Alyssa still had a good heart, so she told the scientist to run. Go, hurry, get out of here, go as far away as you can. She even handed him a weapon so he could defend himself. But the scientist pointed the gun at his own head and said, "Thank you for your kindness, but if they find me." He cocked the weapon, and Alyssa screamed for him to stop. But it was already too late. The scientist took his own life right in front of her. Alyssa was devastated, and the sadness completely consumed her. Meanwhile, things were much livelier at Shanshe's house. Ling was having a great time playing video games. He asked Liu about her parents, who had mysteriously disappeared one day. She said she had searched everywhere for answers, but never managed to find anything. Shanshe found it strange too, since her parents were extremely wealthy people who had simply vanished without a trace. Liu said the only clue she had found was a fashion and science magazine in their bedroom, which was strange because they never read anything like that. Shanshe recognized the man on the magazine cover. It was Benjamin, a highly influential tycoon. Liu doubted that her parents' disappearance had anything to do with him. After all, they were just ordinary researchers. She didn't even know whether her parents were still alive or already dead. And that uncertainty was the worst part. She said it through tears. Shanshe didn't really know what to say, so all he could do was watch her. As the saying goes, the world doesn't just turn, it flips upside down. And would you look at that, folks? Her parents are actually alive. They were conducting research for the Grandmaster's team. Alyssa told them she had something important to say, and that they needed to listen carefully. She revealed that their fellow researcher Lin was dead. Mrs. Li was left speechless. After all, he had been her colleague for many years. He had always dreamed of living with his parents in an apartment by the beach. Seeing what had happened left Alyssa's heart even more shattered. Mr. Li told her not to worry. They would deliver the research on schedule, as long as the master kept his promise to let them see their daughter once this nightmare was over. Alyssa simply asked, "Do you want to live?" Mrs. Li said, "Of course they did." That was the reason they had agreed to cooperate with the research in the first place. Alyssa warned them not to fool themselves, because knowing the master, he would never let them walk away. Mr. Li told her she was imagining things. That was when the guards suddenly appeared. Alyssa didn't hesitate for a second and put a bullet straight through one of their heads. She told the old couple, "Come on, we have to move fast." Before leaving, they said they couldn't just abandon their research. These two really had their priorities figured out. They went to a beautiful cube that radiated a prism-like aura. This was their only hope of stopping the catastrophe. Alyssa ordered them to hurry. The security agents were already rushing down the corridor as the entire complex blared with alarms. Through the crack in the door, Alyssa saw them sealing every exit and closing in around them. "Get back and stay down," she shouted at the two elderly researchers. Outside, the guards ordered them to open the door. The goons unleashed a barrage of gunfire, but Alyssa was armed too and took down two of them. However, the bullets that struck one of the guards didn't seem to do anything. When he tore open his shirt, they revealed the iron cybernetic plates covering his body. He was a cyborg, and apparently so were the rest of his men. Alyssa thought she was finished, but things weren't ending that easily because Mr. Li threw the angel's heart at them and ordered them to retreat. The moment it activated, the cyborgs froze completely and couldn't move a single mechanical joint. That gave them the opening they needed to escape, while the master watched the entire spectacle from the best seat in the house. Judging by his expression, he wasn't exactly thrilled with how this episode was going. Outside, Alyssa continued running for her life. Helicopters were already chasing after her at full speed. Now things were getting serious for the whole family. Better buckle up. She pushed the vehicle even harder and then asked whether they had anywhere they could escape to. Mr. Li told her that he had a daughter in Lueri. Mrs. Li added that it had been so long since they had seen her that they didn't even know if she was still okay. Alyssa told them they were running out of time and options, so they needed to give her their daughter's name immediately. Mr. Li then said, "Her name is Lu." At that moment, a chill ran down Alyssa's spine as she immediately remembered exactly who this girl was. "Yeah, we all know exactly who she is." Mrs. Li asked if Alyssa knew Liu, but Alyssa said she only knew her by sight. But what did it matter? She smiled and said, "Chanchel, it looks like our paths are going to cross again." And that's where we're leaving the story for now. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You can also consider becoming a member, since it's really cheap and helps support us a lot. While you wait for the next video, leave a comment asking for the next part. Check out the video on your screen because it's also really good, and join our Discord server to find out the name of this series. With that said, I'm signing off for now, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.